Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of Whick TV, a cross ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And, gang, have we a show for you tonight? In study after study after study, we see a pattern play out. The more left someone leans politically, the more likely they are to suffer from some sort of mental illness, neuroticy, or anxiety of some sort. Uh, if the person in question is a woman, that rate expands astronomically. So, the question on my mind, and the question I would pose to the panel today, is why is this the case? Is this simply a matter of moths being drawn to a flame, if you will? Or is there something about progressivism, something about leftism that is making women crazy? And we're going to talk about that. We have some wonderful guests here today, a lot of first timers, but we're going to get through. And let's start off with second time guest on the show, Radhom. Go ahead. What do you got for us?
Hi there. So this is just a little introduction. I'm Radhom. I'm a lefty Australian political streamer. I'm also a complete and utter nerd. I paint miniatures while covering politics. I also have a background in circus performance and theatre production. Look, are we doing like a basic thesis going into this?
Oh, yeah. Give us your basic take.
Yep,
Short,
cool.
concise, please.
To quote Kurt Vonnegut, to be sane, what is it here? A sane person to an insane society must appear insane. I think that progressive people generally have a better handle on the reality around us, and there's a number of things about reality that are kind of shit. So I think depression, anxiety can be natural responses to this. Can we teach people better coping mechanisms? Sure, we can always teach people better coping mechanisms. But the metrics that I've looked at really don't seem to give a full picture. I have other issues as well that I'm sure we'll get into as we get into the debate. Don't want to hog too much time here.
Well, thank you for being here, and I guess we'll get into it as we go. Next up, a last-minute replacement for Fairy Queen, who had a personal emergency, so she couldn't make it. Rashad Crenshaw, go ahead. Give us what you think.
I firmly believe that liberal ideology does not, in and of itself, make women neurotic or cray-cray. I believe that the left creates a safe and acknowledging space for those who are mentally ill and willing to acknowledge their mental illness. That's all I got to say for now.
Well, thank you for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Next up, Lav, Femoid, please.
Hi. Everyone knows who I am. I don't really have any labels. I'm just a girl online. I think it's like a chicken or the egg situation, honestly. Obviously, I think if you're more radical in any position, I think you're more likely to be probably mentally ill. I think that also, if you're more likely to vote like for left policy, you're more likely to live in like a hellscape. And that makes people crazy, right? Like living in California made me want to fucking kill myself because it was awful. It was horrible. It made me more mentally ill. So yeah, if you vote for leftist policies where people can like break into your house or where there's like people doing fentanyl on your street, you're probably going to be a little crazy. And yeah, that's, but I don't think that there's like probably a huge, I think that you're probably, if you're mentally ill, you're probably just going to be attracted like a moth to a flame to more radical beliefs, left or right.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Next up, first time guest on my show. We're glad to have her. Alison, please. Oh, you're
Alison,
muted.
You're muted.
I know. Sorry, I have a bit of a lag on my computer. All right. So my name is Alison Tiemann. I founded Honey Badger Radio, which is a space that talks about men's issues. And recently, we've also been talking about Gamergate 2. It's not 3 yet. It's just 2. And so we just talk about all of these sort of social, political stuff from an issues that a perspective that's inclusive of the concerns and the problems that men face in society. So that's my approach. Hopefully, I'll be able to bring something interesting to the conversation. I don't really have necessarily a position at the moment. Maybe a tentative one, but we'll see.
I guess we'll get into it and we'll find out, right? You will be the prize tonight. See who can sway you to their side. Next up is another first-time guest, Badger Radio. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
No, it's okay. My name is Brian.
Brian, please.
Martinez, and an American producer of Honey Badger Radio. I work with Alison, hosting shows, and I try to get guests, and I do a lot of interviewing and stuff like that. Originally from Chicago, have since fled. Chicago was burning. I wanted to protect my wife. So now we live in Southwest Virginia in a smaller town. And I think that my position on this, it actually begins with questions. So firstly, because like there is the statement or the ask is, you know, are women on the left being made crazy by leftism, or are they crazy and then join the left? And I think my first question would be, are women crazy? Because I think that there is no. I mean, I think that there is a women's instincts can be.
I've asked it many times.
They can be metastasized,
We all
or they can
have,
be catered
especially
to
if we date women.
from a certain perspective. You can essentially you can harness something in women to put them there. So I think that my theory is, or at least my belief is, that leftism appeals to women because there is something in female nature that is attracted to it. And it's obviously not all women, it's to different degrees, but I think that there's a reason why recent data has shown that Generation Z women have moved far, far left, while Generation Z men have basically stayed about the same. Although people say that they're going right, but the data shows that men haven't really changed. So the question is, why is that happening? And you know, like what is going on under the hood there? So that would be my
Initial question.
my position. That I'm basically answering the question with the question. Sorry, but
it's a good thing. Thank you for being here. And well, let's start out with that question. It is a good question. Is there something within women, within leftism itself, that primarily appeals to the crazy that is in women? Right? What do you guys think of that? What do you think? Go ahead.
Well, I think compassion, obviously. I've always looked at sort of the left and right as masculine and feminine, like Jungian sort of integral, like, you know, emotional mind, wise mind, you know, logical mind. It seems like the right obviously caters more to logic and, you know, reality, so to speak. I think that the left is also logical in some ways, but also I think is based more on compassion and compassion politics, which I think ropes women in. Yeah, I think that's like, I think that's huge.
Ropes women in. What do you, Rad? You seem to disagree.
And also that women are clearly, just as our survival instinct, we're more likely to be, what's the word?
Tend and
like,
befriend.
Well, that's true, but also there's like women are more susceptible to like contagion. So like, like even just like social contagion. So if your friends are this way, you want to integrate. Women are integrators; they're collaborators. So yeah.
Well, you seem to have a problem with that, Adham. Go ahead.
So I strongly disagree that the right and conservatism is more reality aligned. It's, from my perspective, it's a lot more traditionalism versus change, something being traditionalism versus progressivism, you know, homeostasis versus development. Something being the way something was done before doesn't make it a more sane or real way to do it, is one of the big problems that I have with what you've said there.
We could have a whole separate talk on this, because I understand where you're coming from, but I think that the reason why traditionalism always comes back is because it's tried and true. It's what works. Right, so even with an ever-changing society, it's what works.
Well, this is a little bit of a side. Hold on, please. The
Yeah.
debate isn't
Okay,
on
we'll
traditionalism
get back to the
versus
crazy
leftism.
ladies.
That's not what we're talking about. I do
Yeah.
want to introduce our final guest for the evening, who's a bit late, but that's okay. We forgive her. Jane, go ahead. We're talking about women, and does the left make them crazy? Is there something about leftism that appeals to the crazy in women? That's where we're at in the discussion. Go ahead, introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll get back to it, please.
Okay. You guys can see me and hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Jane, Gypsy. Yeah, I don't really know what to say. Should I?
No, we'll
Sorry, I'm a
just
little
get
bit
into
late.
it. It's all good. We'll elbow your way in when you find a space. But I
Okay.
guess just to recenter this, gang.
So there is another part, getting more to the question that's been asked and pushing back against what Slav said here, and a general assumption that it seems to exist in at least some members of the panel. I don't think that women are intrinsically crazy, or at least intrinsically more crazy than men. I think a lot of this is social framing. People will see the same kind of behaviors from women and men and deem one set as being less acceptable and one set as being more acceptable.
But just to be
I
clear,
really
Radham,
think that there's a
moment,
Mm.
please, Radham, though. The studies we're referencing are people who self-identify, right? Like, and then they report that they self-identify as liberal, or very liberal, or super extremely liberal, and then they report that they have mental illness, anxiety, and other diagnoses.
This I'd put down to, so I've already brought up the alignment with reality thing in my opening statement, and an understanding of how fucking crazy and stressful major aspects of the modern world and our encroaching future are. Yeah, that's going to lead people towards certain states of mental distress. Also, I think progressive people both progressive people and women are going to be more likely to be in touch with their feelings and emotions, and thus be more likely to report feelings of depression or anxiety. There was one stat in one of the articles that you linked that was looking at has a doctor ever said you have a mental health condition? Now, and, that was higher for liberal women, or young liberal women, because this is what this article was looking at, than any of the other
And they're more likely
relative
to see a
groups.
doctor. They're more
But
likely to
a
see
doctor's
psychiatrist.
not just going to come out of the blue and say, I think you have a mental health condition. You need to be talking to your doctor about mental health for your doctor to then go and say this. So there's a strong selection bias in a lot of the data that's being utilized around this.
It's not school. You can just, if there's a pause and you want to talk, just talk, buddy.
I'm trying to be polite. I think that Radham is onto something here, because there's some issue. Okay, I know that in the interest of the topic, we should just address it as it is written. However, there is a problem with studies I have found in all of the time that I've been doing the show, that it's hard to know if we're talking about anything concrete, because when we say women are, that when they choose to identify with a certain political slant, they will, because of a number of factors, not least of which is that women tend to be more agreeable, so they're going to basically go along with whatever they think is going to rock the boat the least. And that means that, if liberalism, and I'm saying liberalism, not leftism, if liberalism is generally seen as good and just and preferable for the average person, then most people, especially women, are just going to say, yeah, I'm liberal. Like, I like people. I like being the good things. I'm all about the good things, right? And so this makes it really hard to determine what they really believe. And when you couple that with another thing, which is when men and women are experiencing distress, women are more focused on their distress, and they tend to make it a bigger thing than maybe it needs to be. We can't really tell because we can't inhabit. I can't, like my wife, okay, if my wife and I, let's say we have let's say I have like a headache and she has a headache. Like my headache, I won't even talk about it, but her headache, it'll be like the end of the world. It's like a different
Please, have you heard of man flu? Have you heard of man flu?
Well, no, I mean, I've gotten sick, but I generally keep it to myself, is what I'm saying. But I think it's
But also,
it
like,
comes from
okay,
like the way that women tend to
I know what you're saying.
report on their experience. So if more women may be saying that they have, they're struggling with anxiety or depression or some other mental struggle, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily more prone. It could mean, I don't know, but it could mean
They're more likely
that
to.
men are less likely to self-report because they're more likely to just like tough it out, And
Also,
then we
how
could
much
get
of
into
this
like
is
the
self-
reasons
how
for
much of
that.
this is self-diagnosed?
Well, I think also the left is more
different
likely to
mental-
Hold on,
welcome.
hold on, one at a time. One at a
But
time.
I've been jumping in a lot. I'm stepping back for a moment.
Okay, step it back. And Jane, anytime you want in, just elbow your way in. Okay. This
I'm
is
so sorry. I'm
free
still
flowing.
like messing
All
with
good.
settings and stuff, but
Go
I'm
ahead.
listening now. I'm in.
Rashad, please.
You sound great, Jane.
I was just going to say that I think the left is a lot more welcoming toward people that have these issues. I mean, it's not even a matter of them being more willing to say something. I think the left is more willing to talk about it. I think you see a lot more tough it out mentality from the right, a little bit more tough it out mentality from conservatives. And I think that on the left, you find a lot more, welcoming of that, a lot more acknowledgement of these mental health issues. And I think that people are going to go where they're accepted. If someone's dealing with mental health issues and the left is saying, hey, if you're BPD or depressed or, whatever you got going on, we will acknowledge that. We'll work with that. We see what you are. We understand what you are. However, on the right, I think there is a lot more of a tough it up, tough it out sort of mentality that I think we're trying to grow beyond as a society and move away from.
Is that
this
good
also
though?
has to do with femininity, masculinity, which is how I see the two parties, is that one wants to wallow in it and talk about it, and then the other one usually wants to give you like, okay, well, if you don't feel like your life has purpose, if you feel empty, if you feel ill, if you feel depressed, seek God, seek exercise, eat better, be involved with your community, which is usually what people on the right say. I don't know what...
I see a
maybe
lot
it's
of this
different.
from people on the left as well. This might be an Australian cultural difference. I don't know.
Maybe you guys are crazy over there. But yeah,
But wallow's a
left-
loaded
if we
term.
even
Lab.
exist.
Wallow is
Actually,
loaded.
that's true.
Wallow is very
I
loaded.
noticed that like there are even some like if you go see like a super liberal therapist, like they just want to like talk about your trauma for like hours and hours and hours and never move past it. It's like, and then it becomes a label. So then you're mentally ill, and then you join this community where you're like labeled as such, and then you find a micro community with like within your label. It's like it's very strange.
Well, if you go to church, if you go to church, let's say you go to church, right, and you start talking to your pastor or the church community about your mental health issues, you're probably more likely to receive some sort of answer about spirits of, demons of this or spirits of that, more so than a comprehensive analysis. You're probably going to get a lot more of a...
Hold on, let him finish, and then we're going to
You're probably going to get a lot less of a scientific
Yeah,
conclusion on
maybe
what's
in
going on with you.
1892. Maybe in 1892. That doesn't
No,
happen.
No, you do still get
it
that
still
stuff
happens today. It still happens today. A lot
Not
of
in
mental
any
health
community.
issues, addictions, mental health issues, a lot of these things are credited as being spirits or demons of sex or
You know what? I
demons of
actually do know
this
that
or
this is true in the
demons
Black
of that.
community. I actually do know that this
Okay,
is
well, I'm sure
Okay, we're gonna stop.
I'm sure, no,
No, I'm not. There's nothing.
It's
Okay, why are you making this weird?
let me
it's
say,
more accurately an evangelical thing from what I've seen.
Sure.
Not
Yeah, it's-
racialized. It seems to primarily be
Oh,
evangelical
Jesus
and
Christ.
Southern Baptist churches
Yeah.
that are really strong in these particular
Yeah.
kinds of analyses.
do we have
I was-
any
I was
analysis? Do
saying
we
it
have
in
any
layman's
evidence?
Hold on.
we have any-
There will be order in this court. I want to pass the ball to Allison, who tried to get in there, right? But we're gonna give it to her.
Sorry that I
Give
said the
her-
word black.
Give her
My
a
bad.
chance.
My
You're
bad.
fine. You're fine. Go ahead, Allison.
Okay, well, first of all, people approaching mental health from other perspectives than the sort of like hegemonic, very corporate Western perspective, I don't think we should stigmatize them, because there is some benefit to a community-based approach, to an approach that brings in spirituality. So, but aside from that, that's really far off topic. So the other thing I wanted to point out is that the left's approach to mental health, as far as I can tell, depends on gender, right? Yes, women are given support. Men are not. At the instant you start talking about men's issues, the bootstrap rhetoric comes out with the left. And this has been my experience. So I just wanted to point that out. So it may also be this, I think this also ties into Brian's point, which is that because the left is welcoming to women's mental health issues, and not welcoming to men's mental health issues. Men may gravitate towards the right. The right's not really welcoming to mental health issues, like, or at least not welcoming to an approach to mental health issues that doesn't ultimately put the onus back on the individual. But at least with the right, at least men are, not necessarily singled out as much as the.
Can you
everybody
turn
else's
yourself
problem.
up just a smidge?
okay.
People are saying you're very low.
All right, let me see if I can do that.
Okay. Sorry about that. It's just people were wanting
it's
to hear
fine.
what you had to say, and they're like, we can't hear her. So yeah, if you could turn yourself
I'm
up.
always struggling with this microphone.
All
How's
good.
that? Okay.
My audience, if once she gets better, let us know. Okay. Let us know.
I'm maxed, so
Yeah, it'll have to do. We'll struggle through. But that's an interesting point, right? And I'm curious what all of you think. Is the left just treating women in a way that it just does not treat men, right? Is it on the left? For most leftists, I hear at least, they want to be egalitarian, right? Treat both sexes as equals. Don't elevate one above the other. This is the common rhetoric I hear. But is it true that the way they behave is the opposite of that? What do we guys think of that? What do we think of that, guys?
There's
Go ahead.
there's
I'd agree.
evidence. Oh,
It depends on the community. I've been in progressive and leftist communities. Sorry, I'm going to mansplain this. I've been in progressive and leftist communities that have been like quite default hostile towards men. I think this is more the radfem position, though a lot of radfems are splintering off from the left with turfdom and transphobia. But I've also been in leftist and progressive communities that have been very fucking supportive of men's mental health.
what I was going to say is that it's true and well documented that men and women respond to different therapies. Men and women are different. They respond to trauma differently. Men usually like self-medicate. Women more go inward, where men go outward with like mental health. And obviously, yes, they respond differently to CBT, DBT, cognitive behavioral, dialectal behavioral training. So that it is just different for men and women. Also,
it's not the response to different therapies isn't just a men and women thing; it's a neurotype thing as well. People with ADD don't tend to respond well to cognitive behavioral therapy. They do respond better to dialectical behavioral therapy. Yeah,
I mean, I would agree
it's a
that
very
the left and the right.
multivariate thing.
I would agree that the left and the right treat mental health differently based on gender. I do admit that. But I also think that it's something that can be improved on. And I think that both genders should look toward a reality in which we're all acknowledging our mental health issues and actually becoming a lot more honest about them instead of running from them and promoting the idea that, you need to tough it out all the time. It is okay to go to a psychiatrist or a therapist or whatever and take care of your issues for both genders. I think the left needs to do a better job welcoming men when it comes to this, but I think the right is completely delusional in every way of just, get over it or push through it or find God as if, y'all are Kanye West. Like, there has to be a bigger health advocacy as it pertains to mental health for men, and I think the left is providing more so of that than the right. And I think that's part of the reason why, as we look at the topic itself, specifically women, I think that's why women are more attracted to the left, is the fact that it's more compassionate, it's more inclusive, it's more welcoming of people's issues. And I think that also people that are more empathetic to the world's issues, empathetic to the issues of others, are probably more likely to possibly even be more mentally ill. If you're seeing more in the world, if you're experiencing more in the world, if you're doing more in the world, you're probably going to have a bigger weight on your mind than someone who's living in a much bigger, say, bubble.
Understand the left creates this boogeyman of like rightoids where they're like they don't talk about mental illness at all. They don't do like this. I've just never had this experience. So when you talk about this, like how like
Actually,
people on the right don't care at all, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
What right wingers would you say?
Hold on. Go, Brian. Go ahead. Yeah.
Can we define, because this is like something I run into, I've been running into this for 10 years now. So what I would like, and if you entertain me for a moment, I think that when people talk about the left and the right, they are speaking about what it seems to be completely different worlds. So I would like to ask for a list of traits that define the left maybe like 3 things. So we won't take too long. 3 things that define leftism and 3 things that define rightism. And I want to hear it from Rashad and Radham. I want to know what are the 3 things that define leftism. I'm going to write these down.
I'd say liberty, inclusivity, and
Liberty for the left?
Wait, no, it's okay. I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
Course.
What's the third thing?
I'd say and progressivism.
Well, that's kind of a blanket
mean?
term.
Okay, hold on. Okay, it's obvious, like progressing toward a better.
Do you mean like forward thinking?
Okay, I don't know, women's rights for different races and people, like progressivism, like egalitarianism, whatever, same shit.
The idea that we're progressing towards something better, supposedly.
Or something better, or
Yes.
maybe equality. Like, do you is that a
I
fair
think-
one to say?
I would say that
History.
I don't want to rob the right of everything good and gracious in the world.
No,
okay?
I know, but I want to. But hold on,
Lab,
I
stop.
want to know. No, this is important because the way that you see your side and what you're calling the other side, it affects the way you talk about it. So I want to know even if you think the left has all the good things and the right has all the bad things, I want to hear it. So so you got liberty, inclusivity, and what else?
Progressivism.
And
Equality?
progressivism or egalitarianism.
Oh,
Let's put it
the
that way.
desire for positive change is what I'm thinking he's getting.
Yes,
at.
for especially for outside groups that
Okay,
don't.
I think
so
the problem
positive
is that progressivism has so much
change
baggage and
Or
so
what
many-
for the minorities or for the disenfranchised?
for society in general, but also for people that are in the out group.
Okay, so that's the left wing. Would you agree with that, Radham?
More or less.
Okay. So what is 3 traits that define the right?
Cool, I'll do that because we've already had the left. I would say conformity, traditionalism, and exclusion.
Conformity, traditionalism.
What happens if someone on the left says
And
the N-word?
exclusion.
What happens if someone on the left says the N-word? What happens?
What are you talking
Okay.
about?
exclusion.
What happens if what happens if someone on the left has maybe is pro-life? What happens
Do we
if they're
want to
pro-life?
get
Okay, in the
do we wanna
context in
get
which you say
into
the
a
N-word.
paradox
what happens,
of
what happens if someone on the left is religious?
We had
Okay,
fun.
so-
What happens
that's
if
ridiculous.
someone is trans, whether or not they're on the left or the right? What happens if
I'm
someone is
pro-
queer, whether
We
or
have
not they're on the
conservative
left or the
trans
right?
people. What are you talking about?
I
I
think
am
they're
pro-
making
Yeah, and
generalizations about,
conservatives
like,
work to
stereotypes.
Wait, hold on.
exclude and marginalize
Okay.
those trans people.
It's-
Just because
you're
someone's an
talking about a
Ernst
boogeyman.
Röhm type
I
doesn't
will
mean they're
have-
being
About a
accepted.
boogeyman.
I will have order in this court.
I'm
I will
not
have
talking
order
about a
in this
boogeyman.
court.
I have seen this in
Ram,
action.
do you not listen? Is my mic not on? Do I have to mute you? Okay.
Sorry, I
I'm-
didn't hear you.
I understand. It's fine. I'll be louder. Jane was trying to get in, and Jane hasn't said a goddamn word yet. And I want to make sure that Jane has a chance to speak. So, Jane, go ahead. And I see your super chats. We'll get to them at the top of the hour. I promise you. So get your super chats in. I'll read them out, and we'll talk about them at 7 o'clock. Cool, gang? Cool. Give me money. It's great. Jane, go ahead.
Okay, I think the main difference between the left and the right is the left is more open and comfortable with changes and making like progression in society, making changes that includes like just changes, new things, outsiders, and the right is more conservative, so they conserve traditions, they protect like the status quo, authority, they like to like keep things the way it is. I think that's like the big differences, but like in my opinion on all of this, like I think this is less a gender thing and literally just more a liberal and conservative thing, because we do see on the right the women conservatives have lower mental health reporting, like mental illness reportings, than men on the left. So it's not really so much a gender thing. I really do think it is a liberal and conservative thing, and that does come down to like your ideology and your way of thinking and your way of outlook of life.
Well, I would say that men on the left are typically more feminine.
I don't think it has to do with femininity, but
Well, I think it does, and I don't think that that's necessarily
just a-
negative. I think that there could be feminine men just as there could be masculine women.
there's
I think
like a
that
lot
it's
of
more feminine.
Let's
at least
just
the way that we colloquially
Deconstruct gender
talk about
tropes. People can
feminine.
be however they want.
Okay, but
There's a
still,
lot of
there's
research.
Still, there are masculine and feminine qualities that we can all understand, right? So when we talk about something, we can all understand the way that we speak about things, at least colloquially, right?
So do you think conservative women are more masculine than liberal women?
Yeah. They're definitely less compassionate, it seems, right? They're less likely to care about
Is it less
the
compassion,
underdog.
or is it just the way that it's
I
expressed?
think these are
Because there's a
learned
difference
traits, not
between-
gendered traits.
It's the
Well,
ideology.
no, I mean,
is
so
there's
what
a
they
difference
say.
between,
I
like,
would say, let me answer the question. So I would say
Answer
something
the
like
question, yeah.
conservative women want to pay less taxes, right? They want their taxes not to be allocated to like a bunch of social programs, usually, which is less compassionate generally, right?
Is
Because
it
would
when
like
you think
argue,
about
I would argue
compassion-
that wanting to have your money taken from you by the state and redirected to some cause somewhere else is not necessarily more or less compassionate, but it is more lazy, because in general, conservative people, and I use that with quotes because I don't like those terms, tend to donate
People?
far more to causes than,
Well, they have more
than
money.
Liberals do.
Well, they have more
Liberals
money.
tend to allow
People
the
don't
state
exist.
to
They're
take
just
their
a
money
social
and
construct.
redistribute it.
Well, they just typically have more money to donate, is what it is.
Not anymore.
I don't know about that.
conservatives
Yeah,
tend to
I
be-
don't know about
I
that.
don't think that's true.
I don't think it's
To
true
what
anymore.
specific
Conservatives tend to-
causes though? Because when we talk about compassion, it also encompasses people that aren't necessarily a part of your in group. So when we talk about conservatives donating money to XYZ program, right? They're probably not all that interested in helping communities that aren't necessarily Christian or white or this is just facts. Like if you want to this is a fact.
This goes-
What boogeyman are you talking about? This is literally a fact.
As a demographic, black men are conservative. What are you talking about?
No, but this goes back
Black
to
men
the
might be more
differences.
black men could be conservative as a demographic, but they can't even vote conservative because they're not welcome in the Republican Party completely as black
What
people.
are you talking about? There was
What
a
are
black
you talking
president
about?
8 years ago. What
Was
are
he
you talking
Republican?
about?
Was he
Yeah,
Republican?
He would be Republican now. Yes, he would be
Lord.
Republican
No,
now.
Okay.
Lad, do you actually believe conservative
He was
white
a
America were
moderate. He got
fans?
the moderate vote.
Do you actually believe that Barack Obama would have been welcomed in conservative white American circles and would have won the presidency? Yes, the same conservative white American bubble that champions Candace Owens, who spent a whole decade shitting on blacks, and the moment she spoke ill
They
about,
champion
she all of a sudden lost her job. The idea that somehow or another conservatives are
white
equally open to outside groups is ridiculous. Specifically,
For
white conservatives.
the record, Candace
for
Owens didn't
both.
get fired because she criticized white people. And I
No.
think anyone who knows that she wasn't fired for that reason.
I didn't say white people. I specifically did not mention the group in question. Anyways,
Conservatives
if
will
she
be
came to
welcoming
white people,
Why do you need to be welcomed into a
Damn.
group to vote that way? Why do you
Gang.
need a white person to say you're allowed to be here to be conservative? That's fucking
Thank you
retarded.
for the
Okay,
by the way,
whoa.
chat, thank you for the memberships, right? That's 5 from Slongy and 5 from Yahooligan. I really appreciate it. You're donating to me, so apparently you must be liberal. Though if you conservatives who watch my show want to show the liberals
apparently.
up by donating more, that would be welcome. Anyway, continue, please. Just had to do that. Go ahead.
So I don't think donating is necessarily like a feminine or liberal or conservative trait. It's you would look at who they're donating to. So again, like conservative, they're protecting more of like their own, like conserving more for themselves, and they're less welcome to outsiders. So maybe they're more willing to donate like within their own community, or they're like spending more money on their own family and stuff like that. Whereas like liberals might be more open to donating to communities outside of themselves that don't necessarily affect them. And I don't think like this has to do with femininity or masculinity at all.
that's what I meant when I was talking about that, because it reflects on compassion, which we were talking about in terms of masculine and feminine.
I'm using
So-
it as a more like Jungian philosophical sort of like.
Well, I asked
I'm not
you-
saying it's like.
Yeah,
it's-
Jung
I
ain't
asked you if-
science.
I asked you if
Well, no,
conservative
it's obviously
women.
not. I'm not.
Hold on,
speaking-
let Jane ask you the question real quick.
Okay, yeah,
Ask
I
the
asked you
question so
if
we can clarify.
conservative women were more masculine than liberal women, and you said yes because they're less likely to donate.
I said they could be seen that way, right? So, and then I gave you an example. So you made it sound like I gave this like A to B answer, and I didn't.
Well, I was just
So
like,
I can give you other examples of like more masculinity.
I'm just saying you categorize that as a feminine trait. like donating to charities. So
It can be seen as a feminine trait.
You-
Or, like or caring about poor people, or caring about like people in general. Like women are more likely to work like jobs for service. They're more likely to be nurses. They're more likely to be they're more likely to do like church outreach projects. They're more likely to work at a
Liberal
homeless
women?
shelter. Yes.
are more likely to do church outreach projects.
Yes.
I don't
Like,
know.
Women in general are more likely
I don't know
to
if
do
that's
outreach projects.
true, but a stat
Do
was
you not
mentioned.
think that you
And
can be
hold on,
liberal and wait? Do you not
Hold
think
on.
that you could go to church and be liberal? I'm like, what
Yes,
are we
you
even
can.
talking about right
I'm
now?
asking about more likely though. I think it's like pretty
Then
obvious
men?
that
Yes. Then men? Yes.
no, than conservative women.
okay, we are looping here. I want to get us back on
Uh,
track. A stat was mentioned earlier.
Sorry, you go. There's a particular thing I want to bring up, but I can wait on that.
Okay, hold it. Keep it in the chamber just in case. Right, we might need it later, but don't pop off too early. I know a lot of men have that problem. We're gonna help you. We'll get you the best doctors. Anyway, let's go.
Kama Sutra, it can help with you.
So, a stat was mentioned earlier, and I forget in the chaos that has ensued who exactly was the one who brought this up, but it is true that women conservatives who identify conservative are less likely than men, right? Liberal men to have mental illnesses and things like that. So I guess to kind of turn the question on its head, is there something about conservatism that makes people less crazy? What do we think?
No, I think there's a problem with framing here, because the studies that, at least the studies that you linked, are looking at self-reported rates of depression and anxiety. Not only are there various environmental factors that can explain this discrepancy, and just conservatives not being as in touch with their emotions, being more likely to practice repression. This is not the only metric that we should be looking at. Let's take, for example, sorry, I've messed something up on my stream there. Let's take, for example, suicidality. Suicide rates are much higher among men globally than they are among women. The only stats I've managed to find with suicide rates and political leanings does find a correlation with higher suicides in conservative states, but this also correlates with the higher rate of gun ownership in conservative states. And the easiest way for someone to commit suicide is with a gun. So I'm not quite willing to say that there is a direct causal link between conservatism and suicidality. I'd need to find stats on that from a country that doesn't have the gun ownership issues that the US does. But there's definitely like a mental health issue with men that doesn't exist as strongly with women, and that comes out in killing oneself. So the studies that have been provided, I really think, provide an incomplete picture of what mental health actually is. And if someone knows they have a mental health issue and is getting help and treatment with that, then they might actually be in a better mental state than someone who doesn't realize that they have a mental health issue and thus isn't showing up on the stats provided. There's also a particular point of bias in the article that Whick provided, where the person looked at Tumblr and said Tumblr, created a insular echo chamber that drove women insane, and compared it to 4chan, casting 4chan in a positive light. 4chan has spawned multiple mass shooters. It's a hive of conspiracy theory, disconnection with reality. It was the birthplace of the modern alt-right, which is just the politically correct term for neo-fascism. There's like the way these studies are structured, the data that we're looking at, I think is providing a very incomplete picture.
Thoughts, gang? Not all at once. You all were begging to talk earlier.
W.
Well,
He's
if
a
we're gonna
W.
talk about If
Sorry, I did drop a lot of info there.
Men's mental health in this, I think that it's important to note. If you can look this up yourself. We have spoken on the show to many people who work in mental health fields, and you look at the guidelines for the American Psychological Association's approach to treating men, there is a good explanation as to why men are not going to psychologists for help in most cases, because the psychology field itself is feminist and it does not help men. And this is not to say that this is the reason why male suicide is as it is, but I think that it's worth pointing out that the services as they exist are not in the interests of men, and I can point you to several people who work in the field and work with men that can co-sign on that. So it's not...
if you can put links to those in the group chat, I'd be happy to check them out later.
Yes, I can give you some names. There's a guy in England, a couple of guys, John Bailey and Phil Mitchell, and I've had them on as guests, and they can explain because essentially the psychology field is the people in it have been educated with a kind of feminist framework that puts men in this position of patriarchal power, which it makes it basically impossible to treat them because they are, in the eyes of the person treating them, they are the oppressors, and so they don't get the same treatment. Also, treatment itself
how do we know?
This isn't something that I've experienced with any of the therapists I visited, but
but ideologically, you're probably aligned. You're ideologically
treatment itself is also not framed in a way that is helpful to men either.
Maybe
the way that men and women heal is very different as well. So the way that women heal, therapy can be much more useful to them because they talk about, they may talk it out or cry it out or whatever, but like it'll work for them. But there are also issues with the way women are treated
That's
as well,
a socialization issue. That's a way we socialize young boys and young men.
Nobody actually knows socialization. To be fair, you say that like it's a fact. Nobody actually knows.
Can I talk after Brian is done?
Okay. Hi, I was a young man. I'm going to pull the man card here.
Okay, but you also don't know. You don't know if you're the way that you are because of socialization or because of anything else.
You guys got it. You guys got to take a breath.
I witnessed growing up and had this happen to myself.
Alison. Yeah.
I witnessed this growing up and had this happen to myself. Bullying and physical violence for expressing emotion.
Bro, Whick, you going to hell.
Being called womanly, being called gay in terms that I can't use on Twitch, for expressing emotion. This is a common male experience, and now I can't prove that this is socialization, but I do think it is much more likely for this to be a socialized effect than something that is essential within the nature of different genders.
What if you were just
hold on. Alison wanted to talk.
And you hate that about yourself, and so you think
you have a... I will mute you. Is this
masculine
on? Is this
socialization?
Working? My God. Okay, stop, both of you. Alison, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, I got to get my thoughts sorted because now they're all over the place.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I wanted to take off of what Brian was saying. If we can frame this in a way, in terms of men's mental health and the current industry and how it approaches men's mental health, and I think the overall context of how we got in on this was to determine, I think, something about, because I'm trying to figure out the how we got to this point and how it relates to the overall topic. So we were talking about the women who have mental health issues being more likely to be drawn to the left, and then we're talking about how men may have more mental health issues that are unseen by these kind of instruments. And whether or not men have more mental health because of suicidal ideation, or men have more mental health challenges because of suicidal ideation, which incidentally, in the framework that Radham was suggesting, would make men more aware of the problems of society. which I find interesting. But anyway.
I do want to offer a slight point of clarity. This will just take a moment. There's an interesting paradox in the suicidality. Women report having suicidal thoughts more often than men. Men kill themselves more often than women.
It's more
Okay.
efficient.
Yeah, women also catastrophize more.
We know
You
that.
had your hand
I mean,
up,
most
Laugh.
of the time when men do it, they mean it.
I'm just
Or
to the point of framing.
Women have better social support networks and have been
It could
like
be a whole bunch of things.
either
It could be a whole bunch of
socialized
things.
or because of an essential nature of women
I
are
don't know
more
if you
likely to
hormones,
discuss this
too.
with each other and work through their problems.
There's a bit. I think that another thing.
I think there's a problem with what Radham is saying in that, and I mean, I'm trying to like get my point out. I was just getting to the point of framing things. Sorry, guys, but it feels like I have
No,
to
it's-
fight
Yeah.
a little.
sorry
gotta-
for
you gotta
interrupting. I
fight
just
for your
wanted to be
space,
cards
don't
on the table
you
clear.
gotta steamroll.
Allison,
You gotta
go
knock
ahead.
'em
You
out.
got it. You got it. Floor's yours. Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So the ultimate thing that the question that is being brought up is whether or not there's like some occult epidemic of men's mental health. And I did mention you, Radham, so I understand why you spoke. But
Yeah.
we
So
can give some
can you define what you mean by occult
Wait,
epidemic?
finish.
like a hidden epidemic of men's mental
Okay.
health. Yeah. Okay. So all of this statement, this entire why are women being drawn to the left? Is it because they have mental health issues? Is it because the left creates mental health issues? Are there mental health issues? Are the mental health issues legitimate because they're actually reflecting the problems in society? Or is it an artifact that men's mental health is more hidden? So what I wanted to speak to is the issue of men's mental health being more hidden and whether or not it is totally captured and served by the society, the social institutions as they are. I would say no, it isn't. And the reason why I would say that is because recently I learned, I think it was Healthy Gamer who brought this up. He said that when you're depressed, you're often engaging in a categorical error where you are attributing everything to yourself and a problem with yourself. That you are constructing this problem. And this is incidentally why I don't necessarily get behind the kind of, I want to say red pill, but I'm sure that'll start everybody talking. The red pill conservative attitude towards mental health, because it does feed into the problem that many depressed people are having, which is that they're attributing too much to themselves. Now, what does the feminist approach to mental health?
I'd just like to clarify, are you referring to
Let her
situational
finish her
depression over
question.
clinical
My
depression?
God. You can ask your clarifying question after
Clinical
she finishes her
depression.
question.
Okay.
Okay. And,
Okay.
all right. So, or I'm pretty sure that might cover both clinical and situational. Right?
Don't let
But
him
I have to look
distract
into
you.
that.
Ask your question, please.
All right. Okay. So the way that how feminism informs mental health interventions for men is to get them to look at how they are a problem or a burden towards others. So it feeds into the categorical error that depressed people make, attributing problems to themselves. All right. Now, I'm going to have to correct Brian. Many men, in fact, most men who commit suicide were in contact either with social services. In the UK, it probably holds for, it might not hold for the US. You guys are a little weird, but they were in contact either with frontline social services or with psychologists prior to them committing suicide, most of them. So it's actually a misnomer to say that men don't seek out help. They do. What happens is they don't get it. All right? And I know that there are some categories of men that are probably served by the mental health industry as it is, and that's great. But there is a large part of men who aren't. And part of the reason why is because mental health issues have become ideological. So the idea of presenting men as a problem has become the point of a lot of these therapeutic interventions.
Is feminism? Go ahead. Finish.
Well, is feminism? Go ahead.
Killing men? That's a question.
I will not say that. Okay, I know that it's going to start everybody off. if I say anything like that. However, I
I'll
have
say it. It should
I
kill
have-
more. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Finish-
I had to
finish-
say it. I had to say it. I'm sorry.
I'm
okay.
sure that you can find second wave radfems who would insist that the point of feminism is to eliminate men entirely, but they've always been a minority.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
radicals are always extreme. I think feminism actually, like, if it was to its true purpose, which is gender equality, ideally would actually help men in a lot of cases. Like, if we had gender equality in family court, or like we said in like mental health, like if we had domestic violence and stuff, if we looked at men and women as equal in these instances that don't necessarily benefit women, feminism, the ideal, like the real concept of it, gender equality, would help men.
But isn't the crux of this conversation whether like these ideological polls are like driving people insane? Do we have any evidence that like
so what I
the
wanted to
therapy?
say
Can we have any? Do we have any evidence
ahead.
that
No, go ahead.
therapists are driving are driving men crazy, or the therapists aren't willing to look at men's
I'm
issues
driving men
honestly
crazy.
because they're men?
I'm
Do we have
driving
any
men
evidence that the average
didn't
therapist
assert
that men
that.
are talking to are taking their issues and saying, well, you are a man or you are a straight white man and you're the reason why blah 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 is wrong, so I can't really treat you fairly? Can we actually credit any of this with data, or are we just kind of just looking at the
Well, let's
cultural
put it this way.
war?
Most
It's part
psychologists,
of
straight
the-
white men.
Hold on, Allison,
The
go ahead.
association.
No, actually, psychologists are mostly female, like overwhelmingly female. Just
The
to answer that.
American Psychological Association's guidelines on
I think
treating
only 5%
men
are men. Sorry.
and boys is if you read it, it considers traditional masculinity to be a contributing factor to mental health problems.
That's
So-
probably true.
Yeah, well, exactly. So you're just so this is the main.
I mean, the
organization-
burden of being a man, a traditional man, is hard on the mind. I mean, that's just a literal fact of life, right?
Yeah, but the ultimate.
You have to be the provider, the bulwark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, however, there isn't actually
complain about it.
necessarily consistent evidence that this is the case. And now, when I talk about traditional masculinity, it seems to be, as far as I can tell from the discourse or the publications that I've read, is they mean the belief that there is something uniquely positive about men and masculinity that isn't necessarily something that women and more feminine individuals express to the same degree as masculine individuals and men. All right, so that
Look,
seems to be the. Okay. All right. Let me ask you.
I'm going to give you this point. I think that, and I found some data that does seem to back this up. So, if a particular method of therapy is failing men who view themselves as traditionally masculine, then we should be trying to develop methods of therapy that work better for people who view themselves within that framework.
We should
I do
make
not
them
have a
trans,
problem with
and
this
we should make
approach.
them
I think
beta.
their mental health is important.
We should give them estrogen. We should make them into women.
Okay.
No.
But aren't women?
I was
like,
waiting for
It's
this shit.
one for
I was
everyone
waiting for
who
this
wants
shit.
it.
I knew she was gonna say some crazy shit.
Okay. All right. I'm going to address Rad.
Lav, you're a consummate troll.
All right.
So the question was asked whether there's studies.
hold on.
I have
Let me finish.
found a study here that does back up her point. I will link it in the chat for anyone who wants to
Thank
check
you.
it
I was
out.
gonna
Then
say,
estrogen or-
Can we let her
mean,
finish her
I'm
point?
trying to
Once she finishes,
myself,
I
but-
promise you, gang. Once she finishes her point, I'll let you guys eat each other. That'll be fun. It'll be great.
Okay,
It'll be
all right.
fun. Continue.
Is it me that has to finish my point? Okay. First of all, traditional masculinity isn't this. As far as I can tell, this traditional hegemonic masculinity comes down to the belief that men and masculine individuals have something unique to give society and women, so that you have identify a feature that men and masculinity offers society that women either don't or don't as much. Okay, and you can actually acknowledge something like that and recognize it. That is considered to be traditional or hegemonic masculinity. Because the alternative is a kind of belief that there is no actual difference, that it's socialized, that there's nothing unique to men. Of course, we never get away from having unique things that women offer. but that there's nothing unique to men. Like, I have never seen any ideological system that does not give women their due, to be honest. But there is nothing unique to men.
Okay,
I
go ahead.
will
Respond.
I will
Ken.
give her this. You quoted the American Psychology Association, or is that correct?
Yes.
I will give you this. It says here, the main thrust of the subsequent research is that traditional masculinity marked by stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, and aggression is on the whole harmful. So I will give you that it seems like they're categorizing a lot of traits that are integral to masculinity as on the whole harmful.
Yes.
However, it doesn't automatically prove that, like, the average therapist that men are talking to is automatically giving them this little pamphlet on how they're the source of everything wrong with society from day one.
It does. Well, I know
Every
from
therapist goes into an office with their own bias. Every single therapist goes. You can't devoid yourself of bias when you go into a therapy room. So we are still dealing with reality, even as professionals.
We're looking at like the number one, like, authority on
Director,
psychology. I mean, they're not a small little podunk organization. This is the American Psychological Association. They are massive, and this is like front and center. But I think we are getting off the weeds because we're supposed to be talking about women. So, and I don't mean to make this about men, but I mean, we need the contrast because we're discussing whether or not, either leftism makes women crazy or crazy women are drawn to leftism. And I think that maybe we should be, I don't like some of the terminology, but I get, for the sake of brevity, that we should use it as it is. But I would ask this then. If the presumption is that leftist women are crazy, then does that mean that conservative women or right-wing women are sane? Or is it just a different kind of crazy? What do you think?
I would argue that it is crazy to tie yourself to a movement that wants to remove your rights and autonomy, which is a different kind of crazy.
I mean, crazy is so subjective. You could say believing in a god that like parts the waters with your hand is like delusional and crazy, or you could say like it's just like subjective. But
well, you know what? Let's move this away from crazy. I know that Whick might.
That's what I was gonna say. I think.
Why don't we move it to happiness versus misery? Because the other finding,
worst mental health outcome, right?
Is not just worst mental health outcome; it's worst emotional.
Well, sure.
Contentment.
Leftists in general are more mentally ill, correct? So I would like
by
to
a narrow set of metrics.
Well,
I
they're
would like to speak to that. I would like to
more
speak
anxiety
to
and
that.
depression.
And the fact
Let
that
Lav speak. Lav needs her due. Once Lav's done speaking, I ask Super Chaz to read the top of the hour. But go ahead, Lav.
I think when your ideology is progressivism at all costs, progress for the sake of progress, you feel very untethered, right? So a lot of traditionalism is about keeping people safe, keeping tradition because it's what works, keeping the peace to some extent, right? Progress for the sake of progress is untethered, it's unrooted, it's ungrounded. That makes people feel sick. That makes people feel crazy. That gives you no answers for our human existential dread, right? It gives us absolutely no answers. It creates more questions, which make you more anxious, more depressed. And then you don't have God to fall back on, like a lot of right people. You don't have family to fall back on. Leftist people are generally, they feel more lonely, right? They don't have communities in church, in friendships. They don't have the same amount of camaraderie, right? It's all very individual based. So I think that obviously makes people on the left more likely to be anxious, depressed, more mentally ill. But also, even on the right, you see that women's mental health is typically worse than male mental health. Apparently, men on the right are the least mentally ill, which I obviously attribute to the fact that men have decided that they are the prototype of what it means to be human, right? So any neuroses outside of like male nature is seen as like significantly more mentally ill, even if this is just like maybe how women are. It's seen as sick. If you're like a little neurotic, you're a little anxious. Which I don't.
You've just described an element of the patriarchy. Congratulations, welcome to feminism.
I'm
Excellent.
a rad femme. What are you talking about? Yeah, I obviously understand that there's a patriarchy. I don't think it's the same thing that you think, right? I don't think that patriarchy is necessarily evil, but I acknowledge that there is sort of whatever. I understand the differences between the sexes and that one is obviously bigger and stronger than the other one, is what I acknowledge.
Okay.
I don't think that's radical.
That's you'd be so fucking surprised. You'd be
Okay,
so fucking surprised.
Before we get into that, let me read the super chats. It is the top of the hour. I promised I'd read the super chats. Thank you for the gift subs. Thank you, Polar Knights, for the Twitch gift subs. Really appreciate you. Thank you for the memberships, and thank you for the 5 more memberships, Longy Stew. Really appreciate all the donations today. Let's read these super chats. I'll get through them quick, and then we can discuss them, and then we can keep going. And I'll read them again at the end of the stream. So don't stop, right? But here we go. $5 from Cameraman 502. Conservatives generally view hardship as an inescapable part of life, which probably contributes some level of anti-fragility. Fair. $5 from Beer Water. What is a woman? Question of the ages. $2 from Slongy and Stew. Wick herding cats. Well, you know, that's what I do. That's why you pay me the big bucks. $5 more from Slongy and Stew. Stew is an anarchist. He is happy to destroy the money. We do enjoy your streams. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for helping me destroy your money. $10 from Zephyr Hack. Second law of thermodynamics states that entropy always increases. Therefore, mental instability increases with time and causes beta males and psycho women to be birthed. Can the panel discuss this?
I think it's microplastics.
If they want. Yeah.
I think it's vaccines even.
What are you doing? Okay, $10 more for Zephyr Hack.
Microplastics, there's an argument for. Vaccines, there isn't.
I think it's seed oils. I think estrogen is being pumped into our water supply.
One more, and then we can get to it.
I agree
And liberals are
with
crazy?
Sigma. I think Sigma femoid is on point. Seed oils, estrogens, plastics. Yeah.
No. Zephyr Hash for another $10. The
If
real
you're
reason
very
for
concerned
this,
about estrogen in food,
oh my God, you will not interrupt
avoid
my money,
battery-farmed chickens.
sir. You will not interrupt my money. $10 from Zephyr Hash to say the real reason for this is that women have always been crazy, but strong men used to keep them in check. Therefore, weak leftist men are to blame for this mental epidemic. Well,
This is not the case.
thank you for the $10.
The model, the old world model was neurotic woman ruling over her household always. Always. I don't know when the fuck this changed. I don't know when people thought that this changed. This has always been the case. Woman is in charge, mom is in charge, dad has the money, dad gets the last say on things sometimes, but if you bat your eyelashes, does he really? Mom is the matriarch. This is the old world. This is old world stuff.
Okay. What do we
Women
think
were
of this?
property.
Sorry for the interruption, but back to the discussion at hand, right? I'll say this, right? Maybe this will get the ball rolling. I think that there is something about the way that leftism deals with mental illness that perpetuates it and also increases it. Now, you can say this is
Like
as
Pokemon.
a
You
good
collect
thing.
them.
Not only that, but we what's the word? Validate it, right? And we I don't think we do this intentionally, and I consider myself part of the left, by the way. We don't do this intentionally. We do this as it's an accident. It's a unintended side effect. What happens is we decide that as everyone has said, you are valid for having a mental illness, but then we encourage subtly to make it part of their identity. So not only are you a person who has a mental illness, but you are your mental illness. Like, not only are you a person with anxiety, but I'm an anxious person. And I think that this way of looking at it, again, psychologically, subconsciously encourages you to, again, it's a part of yourself. And so why would you change a part of yourself? People are adverse to doing that. That's my thoughts. What do you think? Am I crazy, gang? Go ahead.
True, and also women respond to that differently than men do, right? So women are more, they talk about their problems differently. Their brains are different than men's. We are just different. I mean, not different in this fact that you can like track it, right? But we are. If it's socialization, if it's actually in our genes, we are just different. So different things work for different people. A lot of leftist therapy works really well for women, and it doesn't work as well for men. And a lot of like seeking God doesn't work very well for women, but it works very well for men. There are just different things.
I mean, therapy might be more like tailored towards women because it's just like more stigmatized for men to like seek therapy. So the like women probably more overall have been going to therapy and been more treated in therapy. So the treatments have probably been maybe not even like purposely, but tailored to treat women, and they think that's what that works for everybody. So I
That's
think
not
like
the case at all. All of psychology, all of medicine was based off of men for the last hundreds and hundreds of years. So this is just like not true. Like it's
So
not tailored.
It's not really based off of men.
So
Yes, it. What do
It's-
you mean? Yes, it
They-
is.
okay,
It's not that
men are
women-
used in the
it's not
same
that
way
women
that we.
felt anxious. They needed like a masturbatory tool.
I've
Like,
actually read I've actually read the paper. Okay, yeah, but
What paper? Is there one?
well, there is a
Just one?
paper that is dealing. Hey, dude.
Go ahead.
There is
Alison.
a paper that deals with what is actually happening with the whole thing that drugs, for example, are more likely to be tested on men. It's because people are more willing to do something that's potentially damaging to men than women. So the problem with all of this is that you got to be okay with sacrificing women, and people aren't. They aren't okay with sacrificing women in the way that.
You just gave that read off of that. You just like gave an answer for that. It could also just be that men are more socialized to be like towards to go towards honor, to sacrifice themselves in general. It's not some big conspiracy that we're readily sacrificing men.
Well, actually, it is an attitude that most people
or
have.
to engage in a riskier, what's perceived as a riskier behavior. May not necessarily
that's
be an
testosterone.
honor to society thing.
Testosterone. That's what
Yeah,
testosterone does.
Yes, there is an element that men are more likely to take risks, but there's also an element that people are more willing to accept risks to men, and also harm to men, instrumental harm to men, than they are women.
It can
And
be
this
both.
is part. It can be
is
both. Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be both. But I'm specifically talking about this isn't a system. Like the implication is that the system thinks of men as being the standard. It isn't quite like that. It's that they think that, men are better models for women than rats, so they use men. It's like that's really what's happening. And yes, it has led, that bias towards not wanting to see harm befall women has led to drugs not necessarily being tested on women.
Well, men are
to the
also
degree
better
that they should.
control groups because they don't have like menses. They don't have a monthly cycle.
You
they
know,
don't have
but
a monthly
honestly,
hormonal
that's
pattern.
also that's also like a bias. Men's cycle, like reproductive
It's daily.
cycle, is actually probably as complex as women's. It's just that we don't necessarily.
That's not true.
No, it is. Like,
We have more hormones.
Hold
than
on. I want elaboration on this, please.
estrogen, testosterone, progesterone.
No, I want to hold on.
fluctuation
Lav,
is
I'm
very-
curious. What is my cycle? Can you explain this to me, Alison?
well, it's more like daily, but men do
Trend.
cycle through hormonal things as well.
But it's more
just-
regulatory, I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
it's more
it's a
like
better
regular.
control.
What you're talking about is that a female cycle has maybe more extremes, but the
Yeah.
complexity
Yes,
of
which would
men
make
and
us
women's
worse
reproductive,
control.
the hormonal complexity of men and women is not different. So the idea that we can just test on men
From what are you
and they're
saying?
just like a mannequin block standard human is not correct.
Well,
they
no,
have their
I would
own-
say that. I would say that they are not the standard human, but we are different in that we have more hormones and we're harder to control in research.
Do you really
Because-
think you have more hormones
Uh,
than men?
I know that we have more hormones than men. What do you mean?
More
But the
hormone
thing is that there is no
fluctuations.
maybe more hormone
Probably.
fluctuations, maybe, but not more hormones. Like first of all, there is a
Typhon,
huge
if
bias.
you remember later, can you link that study in the chat? I would be
Which
interested
one?
to read it.
The which one?
The willingness to sacrifice men study.
To be
Okay,
old.
well,
Like how old is that
Instrumental
from?
harm
Because
towards men is what it's called. And yes, I will. But
So we have higher levels of hormones. Yes, we have more estrogen, way more progesterone.
yeah, but they have way more testosterone. Testosterone is also a hormone.
Sure, but progesterone comes and goes. So it gets really, really high and then it goes low again. That doesn't happen with
it's
men.
not as stable. Yeah, the female hormone cycle is just not stable. I think the men's is just more stable and women's fluctuate a lot more, leading to just like more, I don't want to say mood swings, but like
What I'll
going
say
through waves
is-
of emotions.
It's okay.
Mood swings is a part of it. It's anti-feminism, literally, to think that mood swings is like a bad thing.
Well,
It is
no, 'cause I
normal,
don't-
and it's female for women
I
to have
don't really-
mood swings, and that's okay.
I don't really
think
it's a mood swing though, because it's not like a
Can be. It doesn't, it's not
hourly
every
by
woman.
hourly thing. But
Sure,
Okay.
it's just hormonal
I get
fluctuations.
what you're saying, yeah, but
All right. So what ultimately I was saying is that men's reproductive cycles, their hormones are not less complex. They may be less fluctuating or whatever. But the other thing is that our society has a real aversion to this idea that there's vulnerability to men in every aspect of their being, like their reproduction, their hormonal cycles, their sexuality, their physicality. Like there's a real blind spot to it, and that contributes to the whole idea that we accept instrumental harm to men because we don't see them as vulnerable like women.
Well, there's also the fact that men are not seen as one man can get 50 women pregnant, right? And one of the things we value as a society is offspring and furthering our society. So women have a very instrumental, every single woman has a very instrumental part in reproduction, whereas one man can get 50 women pregnant at once.
Yeah,
so
but
I'm not saying that's okay. I'm just saying that probably contributes to it as well.
Those are rookie numbers, chat. We can pump those numbers up. But go ahead, please.
Yes, that is possible. However, inbreeding is pretty bad for humans. So it's going to be a disaster within a generation. And also, who's going to feed 50 kids? That's the thing is that human beings have evolved to be pair bonders. That is actually how we are most productive in terms of offspring. So that is, and that means equally that men have the full suite of hormones around pair bonding that can be damaged through behaviors. And I would also argue that there is also stigma towards men who play around, and there has always been. And in fact, this age, the idea of the Playboy bachelor, it's like one of the first times that has been acceptable at all. Throughout most of history, men had to marry, and they couldn't have extramarital affairs without being socially ostracized. In many cases, without being killed. And
because of Christian secularism.
Well, not secularism or just Christianity. But
women were killed
actually
too for
both.
It's actually very common for most family-focused societies to have these kinds of prohibitions against adultery. And yes, women were also killed. Men and women generally were punished for this. As far as I can tell, men were punished more harshly. So there's never, like you were talking about. Yes.
Wait,
men
so
are
how does
punished
this
more
affect
harshly.
the mental health of men today?
Okay, let me use an example that everybody uses: the Scarlet Letter. Do you know why she wore the Scarlet Letter on her dress?
This is a book. This is a fiction.
But it was based on an actual societal attitude. Fiction often is an expression of things that happen. But do you know why she wore the letter on her dress?
There's actual women who were killed.
Yeah, and they're actually men who were killed. And generally, if there was prohibitions against adultery, the punishments against men tended to be more severe, or they were equal. There's
They used
oftentimes
to
they were
kill
equal.
women who were raped if the father didn't
They still
allow.
do.
Where?
They would kill a woman for being raped because it was her.
Where?
Back in the day, they would go to the father.
Where?
And be like,
what legal system are you talking to about?
This
and
is
what
They do this
period of
now.
time?
They do this now in the Middle East. If a woman doesn't wear a hijab.
More men are stoned in the Middle East than women for violations
because
of
women are more likely to follow
haircuts.
rules.
Probably not for being men though. They
Yeah,
might be
less
stoned
likely.
or
Well, I mean,
for
you're
other
saying
things that
We're
are
not really
not
allowed to-
gender
a woman
related.
is stoned for wearing a hijab. A man is stoned for having an emo haircut, or a man is stoned for wearing a flower print.
I would love to see that. No, I would love to see it. I mean, I would love to see statistics on that.
This is fascinating, but I do feel
I
we're
would also love
getting
to see it.
further
Yeah,
and
we are
further off
we're-
topic.
That
I would
is-
like to
yeah.
address Wick's question.
Go ahead, please.
So look, I think that the framing that progressives are somehow crazier than conservatives is quite bunk. And as I've said before, based off a very narrow set of data predictors that can be explained in other ways. The vast majority of mass shootings are associated with right-wing extremism. Are we thereby saying that this is a more sane behavior. There's obviously
Wait,
like a
I
whole
don't think
bunch
that's
of
true.
unhingedness. It
Just real
is,
quick,
yes.
I don't think that's true. I think if you look at mass shootings, most of them are gang related. Most of them
Yeah.
have nothing to do with ideology.
When it has to do with ideology, it usually is on the right.
I think he's
Fair enough.
talking about like
Yeah.
literal mass shootings, not like shootouts. Like
no,
like
mass
someone
shootings is-
targeting like scores of people, like a
We don't
terrorist
separate
act.
those on
Yeah, but when we talk about
Well, I mean,
mass
look, there is
shootings in
an there is an
America, that's not how
objective
we-
there is an objective difference between gangbangers shooting at each other and hitting innocent people, and one person trying to wipe out as many people
Yeah,
as
of
possible.
course.
Still
We just
random
don't have
people
stats. We
versus
don't
like
have
Yeah, like
gang
one
war.
is ideologically
So,
motivated, and the other is like gang violence.
Yeah, I am referring to ideologically motivated mass
Okay,
shootings
just
here.
making sure, because again,
Yeah.
just
No,
this might be
that's a
just a
fair point of
definition thing,
clarification.
right? Yeah.
But I mean, we
Um,
see that if you are more extreme on either axis, you are more likely to be mentally ill. Obviously, when you are mentally ill, you're more likely to have extreme ideas,
and there's also-
extreme ideology.
So I'm gonna
What would
take another example. So if someone has schizophrenia, I've known a few people with schizophrenia. It's a really tough thing to have to deal with. If they're somewhat progressive, they'll generally try and get help, and they will get a diagnosis for schizophrenia. A person with schizophrenia, especially if they are religious, and these days there is an association with religiosity and conservatism, they will rationalize those experiences through the lens of their beliefs and generally won't get assistance with the schizophrenia, and thus those stats won't show up. They'll just think that angels and devils are talking to them and trying to manipulate them.
Yeah, and it might even more so validate the delusional and paranoid thoughts that like they're not schizophrenic because it's not real. Especially if their whole community is telling them like mental illness is even real, that might just like justify that more.
Great example
Well,
for this on the left
it's-
is when someone feels like they're not in their body and they're not actually a woman. The left tells them that they are actually a woman. So it's just the same on either side. It really is.
Trans
It's really
people have
beautiful.
always existed.
False
Transness is not
equivalency,
a fucking mental illness. It's just a way that some people happen to be.
Okay, and those people are maybe really seeing angels and demons.
Okay.
But let me. Can I?
They're
Ryan, please help
not
me.
because there's a cultural differentiation point. Schizophrenics with different religious beliefs will have their schizophrenic hallucinations associate with whatever religious beliefs they
If you're
have.
trans
There's an
in the
interesting
Middle East,
phenomena where
You look different than if you're
outside-
trans in America.
there's an interesting phenomena where outside of kind of Christian dominant nations, religious schizophrenic people actually have a better quality of life because they perceive those voices as being helpful as opposed to combative and
Just
demonic.
like trans people who transition.
Okay, Brian.
This
Brian,
is
I want
such a
Brian to
long
go.
bow to try to draw.
Okay, Brian, please help.
All right, I want
Which
to
guy?
see if we can like nail down if there. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that there are, I don't know, women who are experiencing, because I know that there is a disproportionate number of women that are on SSRIs, and we could get into like whether or not SSRIs are good. I have my issues with them, but there definitely is different crises happening with men and women. There's a lot of talk about problems that men have, but that's not what this talk is about, right? So what I'm wondering about is, what could be the cause of a woman's, depression or anxiety or whatever?
I think it's that
And
we're
I
waiting
know that we
too
can't
long
know
to have
every
children.
case, but maybe there is what I would posit is that it could be coming from a place of instability. Maybe there are things that are really uncertain. There's a cloud over their heads. Like, for example, a woman who is like you look at TikTok videos or posts online of women that are worried about their job, they're worried about money, they're afraid of everything, they don't know how they're going to survive, and you see that. And so I'm wondering, like, if we're trying to look at like these are the kinds of women that are looking for a sense of security, because I think that women generally, if we look at what, and again, I have to speak in broad
They are
strokes because there's no other way to
security
do this. Women
As-
want security, right? They want to be protected. They want to be secure. This is the reason, by the way, that women tend to vote on the left, because leftism is statism. Statism offers them security. It's like, well, we're going to take care of you. We're going to give you free healthcare. We're going to give you housing, maybe. We're going to take care of your kids. We're going to, whatever, provide you with food, you know, all of these things. So women are drawn to that. Men generally are drawn towards liberty. They want to be left alone. They want to build their own way. They don't want, you know, they generally want to like be allowed to be self-sustaining. And typically when men and women come together, like if a man and a woman come together, a man is supposed to bring the security and the stability, and the woman brings like the nurturing and the care, right? And that's what they're looking for.
And the crazy sometimes, which is nice.
Sometimes, but like you know that
We keep coming back to that.
Yeah.
but
Men are
but
different.
what I'm saying is that this is what I think in broad strokes, again, what women are looking for versus what men are looking for. And so this is the reason why, because I saw that Sigma Femoid said this. I don't know if that's, should I call you that,
just
or
call her Lav. That's her name.
Lav?
You can call me
Okay.
anything you
So
want.
Lav said earlier, I remember her saying earlier that women who are conservative, or women that, you know, like that like are married, tend to vote conservative. They vote for lower taxes, right?
Yeah.
And so this is true, because women in marriages are more cognizantly aware of where their husband's money is going, and so they're more invested in how they vote, right? So that's going to impact their voting patterns. Single women or single mothers or women who don't have men in their lives, they don't see the same relationship between like their vote and their benefits. So they're going to, you know, vote for like left-wing things. Usually it's either in their own interest, or they are becoming a kind of meta parent for their country. Like, I want to take care of people.
Do we think
know?
Women who are married and have children have
Yes.
the lowest mental illness rates. So,
Yeah, so
what
then,
I
so the
think is that
question
because we are a progressive society now, women are waiting until their 30s to get married and to have kids, and we have a whole fuck ton of free time, and we've entered a workforce of people who don't respect us because we're not men. So that's a whole issue, right? And also, it might feel unnatural to us to wait so long to have fucking kids. So we're
so
going
then
crazy.
the question, yes, you're right. And so and then they get 35 and they get the baby rabies. And this is
Sure.
just a fact. Sorry, women have babies. That's the truth. So then what?
Well, some women.
Then this begs the question then, I guess. Why is it women who are married and have families are less insane? Or is that just its own form of insanity, having babies and a family, or than women who
You
are
have less
single?
time. You have less
and-
time to be crazy.
Less
Yeah, but
drama.
there's that. But
Can
that
I
would
get
be-
in here? Can I get in
Yeah,
here?
go ahead.
There's a couple things that, first of all, I actually really like the original question, which is, does the right versus the left deal with mental health differently, and does that then attract women? Because women, I think women are more drawn to taking identity from some kind of vulnerability that they have than men are. But then also that tends to not be necessarily beneficial overall, because people have mental health illnesses. They are not their mental health illnesses. And when you encourage people to identify with their mental health illness, you are encouraging them to continue to have it, because they're relying on it in part for something beneficial to themselves, which is an identity.
It's a signal, right? You
Well,
send a
yeah.
signal to your in-group,
But-
like, hey, I'm just like you. I want to be part of the game. I want to be part of the group, right? And so maybe otherwise I wouldn't think of myself as anxious or having anxiety or whatever,
Yeah, like
but I want to be a part of it. So yeah, go ahead.
I have actually, I don't know if anybody else has actually dealt with mental health issues, but I personally have had
Never in my life.
anxiety and depression. My anxiety was so bad that I was functionally agoraphobic, so I was restricted to my house. And I had to do make a huge amount of change to how I thought about things in order to escape that. And if I had been encouraged to identify with that as an essential part of who I was, I think that would have been really toxic. And so I agree that that might be an issue that the left has in terms of dealing with mental health. That is not to say the right does not have its own problems, because the problem that I see with the right is that while they don't necessarily say, okay, you should identify with your mental health, their approach to dealing with mental health is to completely deny it and to say, well, this is just something that you are choosing to do to yourself in many cases, and not all the time, because there's people on the right who are very kind and caring and want to overcome your mental health issues and do give the kind of support you need. But in general, it seems like the message is very much, this is your fault, and if you wanted to, you could power through this and bootstrap yourself up out of it. In my experience, that doesn't work for people. People need to know that they're cared about in order to even begin the process of excavating themselves out of these kinds of things. So it's almost like both sides have problems. And one of the big problems is they're not listening to each other and realizing that the solution isn't the right's approach or the left's approach, but sort of a combination of both in sequence. You need to tell people, yeah, you're worth it. You have something inherent in you that's worth fighting for. Fight for it, but you also got to fight for it, right? And that's the approach that I've seen that has a lot more benefit to people. And the real big one that I've noticed for people with depression is you got to recognize what you're doing right, because you are telling yourself you're doing everything wrong. Start to recognize what you're doing right. That's not on the right. Like on the right, it's like, oh, you're everything you're doing is wrong. Recognize more wrong. Oh, all this other stuff is wrong. And on the left, it's like, oh, you're never wrong. What you're feeling is your identity. That's how you should approach the world. So I mean, it's like, I think both sides sort of got it wrong. I think women are more drawn to the message of, you're a victim, take an identity from it. It's not about the nail, it's about the feeling. It's not about overcoming, it's about the experience of being what you are. And the right, it draws men to it because men, I think, are more inclined towards a message of, everything is under your control. Absolutely everything. You have chosen to pass out drunk behind a dumpster. You have complete control over your alcoholism. If you could stop, you could choose to stop at any point. That's the extreme, for both sides.
I was about to say, I think substance abuse disorder also fits really well into that, and I think there's like a huge issue with treating addiction, because kind of what Whick was saying, they tell you to like really identify, like, you are an addict and you will always be an addict. But on the other side, it's like self-blaming and saying, like, not even recognizing that it is a chemical thing that's causing you to do that, and then educating yourself to be able to overcome your addiction. So I think the in-between is like, it's like in the middle of both of those. It's not identifying with your illness, it's recognizing it and then learning how to cope and how to live with that, but not letting it be who you are. It's just something that you have to live with and learn how to live with.
And I can see how the left approach is sort of in reaction to the right, because it's like, if you identify with your illness, you're trying to say, well, I am somebody with depression, and I'm a good person, that kind of thing, right? I'm still a good person. So it's almost like like attempt to recover from the right's, this makes you a bad person. But then you start to take, oh, this is what makes me a good person, rather than I am a good person. Yeah.
For anyone watching this, I've just had a very good experience with therapy. Don't know, but here's a rule of thumb for people who are seeking therapy. Don't go to a therapist who has Christian in their bio, and don't go to a therapist who has LGBTQ in their bio. Try to find someone who is non-politically affiliated, who has a higher degree in education and psychology that will help you without any of those sort of fucking labels, because you need someone who's not insane.
Editor's note: don't take your advice on who to go to therapist from this panel. Thank you. Okay.
No, you must. You must.
I think
I think that
left-wing men.
there can be some benefit for rainbow folks, especially if they've had bad experiences with bigoted therapists, to know that they're going to a queer-friendly therapist.
Yeah, I think the fact that liberal men and women
I mean,
are
you
more
have
drawn
stated, like,
toward.
you rolled your eyes there,
Yeah,
Lav, but you have stated that people's
I think
like
the fact that
therapists
liberal
bring
men and
their
women are mentally
ideology
ill.
and beliefs to
I
the
think-
therapy.
You're just both going
that
for it, huh?
liberal men and
The
women.
second your
are-
therapist brings up
I think
ideology,
that liberal men
get the
and
fuck
women.
out.
I think that liberal men and
Hey,
women.
Did I
Rashad,
annihilate? Did I annihilate Brian's point? Because I feel like I did. Maybe.
it's
Did I?
okay.
Did I, Brian?
You kind of did. But I
What
want
do
to hear
you
from
like,
Rashad. Rashad hasn't
Anyways,
done it in a while.
Anyways.
No, I'm good. I got something. I'll say something at the end though. Go on.
Rashad, go
I think
ahead.
we see a stronger presence of both mentally ill men and women in left-wing spaces because there's more acknowledgement and there's more understanding and welcoming of these issues. I don't think the left is driving these people particularly more insane. I think there might be issues of left-wing people being more open to more experiences in life, popping bubbles, so to speak, having more friends on the outside, empathizing with out groups, things of that nature might be driving them more toward the left. These life experiences could be causing more mental health issues. That might be one of the reasons why married women probably have less mental health issues than single women, right? If you're constantly, meeting people, talking to people, dating, doing this, doing that, you probably have a lot more drama in your life, a lot more issues in your life. I don't think that liberalism in and of itself is driving these people crazy or insane, but I do think it provides a place of acknowledgement and welcoming and understanding for those people, which might explain why mentally ill people of both genders seem to be more drawn.
Here's a question for you, Rashad, and then we'll get to Brian. Rashad, given that the left does let in more mentally ill people and things like that, in your opinion,
Let in.
yeah, let them in. Yeah, they'll let them identify as, and they welcome them. Have the left doing that made the left more crazy? Like maybe I have this all wrong. Maybe this is backwards.
No, you're not
Right?
wrong. There definitely has been what does the left say? Contagion, or there has been some level of
Social
contagion. Yeah, social or ideological contagion, where there have been a few instances where the inmates have started to run the asylum. I don't think that the left is completely bereft of insanity. I think we've seen, and I would say that the current insanity we see in politics today was kind of started by the left, and then the right tried to counter that insanity with their own insane, people.
Reactionary politics.
Yeah, there has been a social contagion of insanity that kind of started with the left. However, I do think that it's important to realize that we can still maintain a more liberal kind of left-wing society while tweaking some of the issues we have with insane people, the inmates running the asylum, trying to reel that in a little bit more. But I do think that the acknowledgement of mental health issues without making it an identity for someone is probably the best way to go. There is a little bit of room, I'd say quite a bit of room for self-improvement, for taking responsibility for oneself, for acknowledging that you do have control over situations, and that should be a part of the doctrine of mental health. Curing mental health issues, but I don't think the left is like destroying society or driving everyone mad.
Okay, Brian, go ahead. You had something.
All right. So when we say that, like, we are finding that the left, people with mental health are going to the left because the left is more open, or they're more welcoming to them, or willing to validate them, or whatever it is, and are you saying that welcoming and that acknowledgement has changed the left itself, so that it's more people with more mental health issues within it, or is that what we're sort of saying?
I'd say
the inclusion
there's
of
a
people
sign
like
of that.
this has changed how it
Well, if I
expresses
may.
itself.
If I may, so one of the big things on the left that I think is to our detriment is that we value lived experiences. So if you're going to speak on a topic, we tend to listen to you more if you have lived an experience within that topic. So on women's issues, we more likely to listen to women, right? For whatever reason, we decided that we were going to listen to mentally ill people about mental illness with predictable results.
Sure.
And so suddenly we have a bunch of people who have mental illness coming up and say,
you've made it
know.
into an identity too, because now we have like people saying neurodivergent as their identity, right? You'll see it in their profile. I'm neurodivergent, or I have ADHD, or I have depression or whatever. It'll be like in their identity, right?
So
ADHD
ADHD
but I'm not-
is
I'm
a
not-
mental illness.
if it's a
neurotype.
lifelong
I'm not-
condition, if it's a lifelong condition, it's not entirely wrong to acknowledge that, or even say like, hey, look, this is my life. This is kind of what I am. I think when you start saying, hey, look, this is what I have, and it has completely crippled my ability to navigate life. Woe is me. It is the end of my life. This has destroyed me.
In your
I think
bio,
that's a problem.
you deserve to be made
But
into
I don't.
Is there?
I don't think
well,
it's
let me-
wrong
let me-
to
let me
say.
put it-
I don't
let
think
me-
it's wrong
let
to
me
say
ask this, though.
hashtag
Is it-
autistic. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Is it not also the case that these things can in fact be leveraged by people to just say, I am this thing, treat me special?
Of course.
I mean,
There are
a
some
lot of
people
people
out there
that
like that.
happens.
Some
There are
people
some
use
people
it
out
as
there
an
like
excuse.
that. People don't like benefit from that in some way, and then
Right.
when enough narcissists do this, and that's what they are, they're narcissists. When enough of these people do this stuff, then it actually makes it really difficult to deal with people who really struggle with stuff because there's so much narcissism swimming around. And when the left claims that, oh, well, we are the tolerant people, we are the good ones, we are the ones that will allow this, they actually invite these problems. And it makes me wonder, like, when you say, well, we're always like letting these people in, how much of that is, when all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail?
Two things.
Like when you're basically saying we always find the crazy ones and we welcome them to our club. Oh, I found one. And so you're not even discerning people. There's no wisdom.
I think it's
being
worth
exercised.
the kinks. It's worth the issues.
Surely there's narcissism on both sides.
No.
Obviously.
First of
And
all,
what I was
can we
going to
start
say-
with the narcissism thing, like this
Yeah,
is we talk about
this is what I was going to say.
overusing the term. Okay,
This
say
is
it
what I
then.
was going to say, is that I don't know if it's even narcissism as much as it's untetheredness, ungroundedness. So when you don't have anything that you feel connected to, the nuclear family in general, God, you start to do all these things that make you feel like you're the only person in the universe, or that you have more say than you do. You start to become a martyr. You start to be narcissistic in the sense of like very self-focused, because you think that you're all that there is, because you have no higher purpose.
Can we also just acknowledge how easy it is in certain circles? And luckily this is changing. I will say that to the left's credit, this has become less and less effective, right? Because the left has decided we're not going to stand for this anymore, which is great. But one of the things that, again, it still has some currency is you will do a bad and horrible thing to a person, but then when people call you out on it and hold you to account, they'll be like, oh, sorry, I have autism.
Yeah, I was gonna say people do
So-
use it as an excuse. They'll say like, "Oh, well, I'm doing all these failures, or I'm not living up to my standards because I have this." And instead of actually getting better, they'll just use that kind of as a blanket excuse for everything wrong in their life, and they won't like make changes, which is obviously a problem. But I was also gonna
do
say
see the use of that being shielding called out a lot.
the I think the
That's what I was
left.
saying, Radhom. It's like that's changing, but it used to have.
I've
lots.
never seen that go unpunished in my life.
I think not only
Maybe
are
spend more time in leftist spaces.
No,
People
thank
with-
you.
mental illnesses.
Well, that's why you're not seeing it.
Drawn to the left because of like this like openness and inclusion and stuff. I think it's more literally the political ideologies of like putting money into social programs and like help for like healthcare and access to mental illness treatment and stuff. Like I think the left is more like, more taxes to fund more like healthcare access and treatment for, or like welfare programs that help like disability supplements and stuff like that. So I think that might be a
For the
big part of
average
it,
person,
too.
it's probably more culture aspects. For the average person, is probably looking for a representation. I'd say, like, for the average person looking to be represented, like in a hyper masculine or like more conservative space, if you're autistic, people are probably gonna tell you, like, bro, like, all right, like, stop being weird, or act normal, or toughen up, or shut the fuck up, or whatever. Like, having been in spaces like that, people that had more like social issues weren't really entertained in that way. Nobody really sat them down and said, all right, buddy, let's work through this. It's like, all right, you're either going to stop being weird, or we're just going to fuck you up, or keep getting on your case until you stop. I think that the left has created a good space where people can be acknowledged. I don't think that people saying like, hey, I'm autistic, W's in the chat, is necessarily like narcissism, or I don't think it's like rooted in any sort of like maliciousness. I think these are people that probably have issues that make it really hard for them to navigate society to the same level as everyone else, and they're simply looking for acknowledgement of that inability to navigate. So what the fuck am I fumbling? navigate society to the
Difficulties
same
and
way as
challenges,
everyone
yeah.
else. Yes, difficulties like me being able to speak right now.
You might be misrepresenting me a little bit because I did make sure to point out that not everyone who is autistic is a narcissist. I'm saying there are
Okay,
people,
I'm talking about the people who
I'm
are
saying
being
there
who are
people
publicly
who
saying.
who can see that there is an apparatus of
A
sympathy
social benefit
that
too.
exists that will validate them, and then all they have to do is say they are a thing. And even like have you guys seen the
I'm non-binary,
the constant
autism,
videos
gender.
of well, there are women, yeah, there are people who will say they're non-binary and just say it because it will get them more attention, but not
Social
just that, but
capital.
people who pretend to
See,
have Tourette's.
I've seen
they'll
lots
just
of
do it
accusations of this, but
I mean,
I've
yeah,
not
like this.
I'm
actually
saying,
seen it in play.
So
I'm
here,
not
here.
okay. I'm not dismissing anyone who's really dealing with this. Make this absolutely clear. I'm saying that the openness to these people on the basis of wanting to essentially like be better people than the other side is actually rolling out the red carpet for people who have bad intentions, and we
Define
can't know the
openness.
proportions of these things.
Can you,
And I think that also when you are just validating people's lived experience, you're not what you should also be doing. I wouldn't say you're not doing this, but what should also be happening is there should be conversations about where this is coming from. Now, I think that there are two arguments for this, and I think this relates to the main topic. One is that this stuff has always been going on, but those darn conservatives didn't want to give people the room to like speak their truth so that we could like acknowledge that they have these problems because they're so cruel and mean. And on the other side, there is this like maybe there is some social problem, some problem with our society, like broken families, that has led to 3 generations of people who don't know who their father is, and they're not connected to their family line, and they've been isolated or atomized from outside of society, and maybe that has a downstream effect. I mean, like
I just want to be
I mean,
clear, and
both.
I don't think you meant to imply this, but I just want to be clear: fatherlessness does not lead to autism.
Birth control does.
I don't.
Okay,
Got
two
stats
things.
on that?
Two things.
Birth control
pop 'em in the
pills
chat. I'll take a look.
There are birth control pills have shown that they can, like, if a woman is on the pill, she can, or there are studies that have shown, I can get them for you,
Oh boy,
that
this is
it can affect their babies, and they will have more instances of conditions like autism.
Also, men have a
Because of
fertility
the way
window as well.
the birth control pill messes with women's hormones. Because
Also,
it does.
men
It's designed
have
to do
Can
that.
we get
fertility
back on
windows
topic?
Also, men over 35.
Yes, women also have
Let's get back on
Wow,
topic.
this
We're
is-
spiraling.
this is-
We're
I
spiraling.
know. I'm
This-
not okay. First of all, where were you when I had my whole sponsored debate series on the birth control pill? That would have been a great take, right? We would have loved you there. But
Well, I'm not really the guy to ask, but I can point you to a good friend of mine who is a
Fair enough.
researcher, and
Beside the
she has done like a tremendous amount of research, and even did
Why
a
did
talk
you,
at
why
one of
did
our
you why did you
conferences
emphasize
about
she there?
because the thing is, we talk about the
Because
birth
he's
control
social
like it's just this
capital.
on-off switch that has no effects,
Go
and it
girl.
is not. This
my
is
God.
important. This is actually harmful to the women who use it, and they don't know. And so, like, they should know, because, and you could say, you can blame a big pharma if you want to, whatever works. But the point is that birth control, a pill, has problems with it. And this is one thing, to Allison's point from earlier, men couldn't test that. So this is like, we're here because women were just like, well, we want it, right? So this is something else we should also take into consideration. So fatherlessness, the birth control pill, and maybe like the way that our food has changed. This is to Radham's comment before. I eat meat, but I don't eat anything like from a factory farming or anything like that.
This
I get
factory
everything
farm
locally.
chicken specifically has a large amount of estrogen in it,
Yeah,
so that
yeah,
it will
so we
grow
don't
more
eat
breast
that.
milk.
Yeah.
funnily
Karen,
enough.
Are you eating a lot of that, Radham?
No, not really. I mostly eat
Hold
red
on.
meats,
I want to
lamb.
address. I want
Lamb
to
is
address his
delicious.
act. I want to address
Lamb
the
is
points
good.
he made that are actually relevant to the conversation, if that's possible.
You can in a second. Because I do have a question from Brittany Simon, right? And she makes a statement that is relevant, right? to the bio discussion, right? Brittany Simon says that she puts the issues in her bio to attract more people like that to you. I use hashtags in my bio to invite those people to my audience.
I know Brittany Simon. Hi, Brittany. I used to have her on my show.
Oh, she's great. She's come on my show a few times. But she also says, or she asks you, Lav, specifically, do you think that it's narcissistic to put Christian, for people to put Christian in their bio?
I wouldn't say that it's necessarily narcissistic to even
Well,
put.
you did say that they should be made into hot dogs, I believe.
Yeah, but that's because it's annoying and cringe, not because it's narcissistic. So I even said that I don't think it's narcissism. I think it's self-centeredness, which certainly religious people can be. But it's because I also think that if you don't have anything to tie you to other people, like community, like family, like God, and you're trying to find your micro communities, that makes sense to why you would put it in your bio. I just think that that's cringe too. I think if the only thing that you have in common with someone is that you have like ADHD, you probably don't have a lot in common.
Okay.
But
yeah, we're gonna pass it to Rashad, who had some issues with the point.
Okay.
And we're gonna begin winding down. I want to respect everyone's time, so we're gonna get that, address that. We're gonna move to. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this. So you said Viv Lives. You said that people had been saying that this stuff has always been going on, but conservatives wouldn't give room to acknowledge it when referring to like autism or a lot of these mental health conditions that are being kind of like popularized or being like becoming trendy. Isn't that literally like true in every way? Like a lot of like massive amounts of social issues have been like completely just ignored by conservatives, and progressivism has had to be the thing, the battering ram that's forced society to acknowledge it. I mean, if we look like mental health and medical conditions, this is true. Medical conditions were like credited to like demonic spirits. Mental health issues are still credited to demonic spirits.
You're attributing religiosity with
racism was used to excuse the downtrodden nature of minority communities. To this day, race science is still being used to explain away the wealth gap, crime gaps, lack of all sorts of gaps within between minority communities and white communities. The idea that conservatives. That is not the minority. What are you talking about? The idea that conservatives. This is the same. This is the same.
Yeah,
bro,
Tom Sewell is a mainstream conservative race scientist, for example.
This is the same community. This is the same community that has used all sorts of like religious reasons, racial reasons, all sorts of things to ignore reality. I mean, this is the same community that sits there and acts like gay people aren't real. If you just send them to a camp really far away, I'm sure they'll stop liking dick. Like, this is the kind of people we're talking about. And when we sit there and say, oh, conservatives weren't running from reality for the longest, they were. And it's really, really important that the left came in and said, hey, look, this shit isn't demonic spirits crawling up inside of you. This stuff is not, a thing you can pray away. These things are not a result of you being 84 IQ. These are real issues caused by historical events that need to be addressed. I don't think
both
that
parties
any
have
of this
their
stuff
own approach to issues
yeah,
like
but
that.
we do need to acknowledge that conservatives have been a massive roadblock to progress in almost every single way, especially when it comes to mental health.
Okay.
To clarify, I want to ask Rashad. That's not what you're saying is not at all like an extreme position on the left, right? Like all this that you just described. This is just kind of standard, right?
What specifically?
What you said, saying? Like everything that you said about like what the about what the right is doing and like why progressives.
Yeah, I mean it's not even a matter of extreme. It's just a matter of fact, I would say.
Right. It's just like what, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong word. I mean like that is not an unstandard position.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well. Okay. Just a couple things. First of all,
and after you, Radham has to go. We got to get Radham in. So.
Okay, but when you talk about these minority individuals or people who are part of minorities, there is the potential vulnerability that they have, which is spoken to by the left, and this includes people with mental health issues. So there's the needs that they have, which people can get drawn into identifying with those needs because they compel others to do stuff for them, which speaks to Brian's point that you can have people who falsely identify in order to get those things, and that has happened, and I have seen it. And so you have that on the left, so they identify the needs of these individuals, and they identify them to their needs. But these people aren't just needs. Like minority individuals, mental health, people dealing with mental health stuff, LGBTQ, all of that, they aren't just needs. They're also people whose actions matter. And that's something that I think that the left has a problem with. Like, you need to also recognize.
I don't think there's an issue with the
I'll
left
wait for you to
acknowledging the
finish.
humanity or individual. If you're not done, keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just asserting that, like, so consider that people who have needs are more than just their needs. And I think that in particular men on the left start to cast minorities who have needs as being defined by those needs, because men have this interesting thing where they take an identity over fulfilling other people's needs. And it's positive,
Can
but there's
you
also a
elaborate on
negative.
that claim?
Okay. Men want to save people. This is something that I've seen in men. Thus the damsel in distress.
The hero complex.
The hero complex. And it's very much something that men do. So there's this impulse to define people by their needs because you take an identity out of being their hero. And that is something that the left needs to consider. Now, I'm not saying that the right doesn't have that too, but it does seem to be that the left is far more likely to categorize people based on their needs, and then insofar as to save them. And also women do it too, because there's this element of you want to take care of something vulnerable. It's not a bad thing at all. It's not a bad thing. It's an aspect of compassion, but it can be taken too far, because it can be taken to the point where you regard people solely in terms of their needs, and you stop seeing them in terms of the worth and moral weight of their actions. And this is what I see on the right. The right does that. The right keeps that attitude of people should be defined by their moral actions. Or I don't even know if the right does this anymore, but the alternate to defining people by their needs is to define them by how they act. Right?
We aren't what we are. We are what we do, basically. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and I don't even know how well this maps to right and left. But anyway.
Yeah, I get what
I
you're
have something
saying.
to say on that.
but
I'll wait until my.
I want to
my
pass
last
it to I want to pass it to Radham first. He was trying to get in, and then we're gonna. I'm sorry. This is great discussion, but we need to. Again, we don't have all night. I need to eat, etc. But go ahead, Radham. Go ahead.
Cool. Regarding the needs versus actions, I do see plenty of people on the left being judged and weighed as individuals on their actions. I think the looking at statistical collective needs, aggregates of oppression, is a general tactic to try and figure out trends and attempt to move things in a particular more positive direction. I do think that these two approaches need to exist in synthesis. I can only speak from my personal experience, but I have seen them existing in synthesis on the left. Now, I wanted to address Lav's point about community. So there is a Lav. There is a.
Oh, nah, I'm out.
There is a default advantage that comes with religious communities, that there is a structure in place that people can use for socialization and community. On the left, there's a very big thing for pushing for what are called third spaces, which is places that aren't work and aren't home, where people can go and engage in actions with their community. A lot of people on the left do go and find their own third spaces to build community, whether that's doing something like volunteering in a soup kitchen, whether that's getting engaged in local hobby and special interest groups. And something that you also see on the left a lot is the concept of found family, because there are a number of progressives because of who they are have been rejected by conservative communities and family members, and they find large networks of friends that they will meet up with IRL and form close familial-esque emotional connections with.
Okay. Gang.
So we are not devoid of community, but I do think it is something we can do better, and conservatives do have a slight leg up. However, I think the conservative default communities can be their love and acceptance can be very conditional, especially if
As an example for that, and then we do got to
It's
close.
conditional based on intrinsic properties more than based on views and actions.
That's a fair characterization, Lav. I was going to
Yeah.
because you're right. Lav is right when, yeah, the left's love for you ain't unconditional. I promise you.
No.
But it's it's conditioned based on what you say, whether you're going to toe the line, so to speak. Whereas on the right, it's it's that plus.
I mean, on the
intrinsic
right,
value.
there is also towing the
Yeah,
ideological
no, it's
line.
that plus the
It is,
intrinsic
yeah.
values. So, yeah. Anyway, gang, this has been great. It's been fun, but I want to respect everyone's time. I know people have things to do, places to go. I'm hungry, etc. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to read these last super chats. We're going to get an outro to each of these wonderful individuals, and I want them, while they get their outro, to tell you where they can find you, right? To tell my audience where they can find you if they want to find you. Put your links in my chat. All that's legal and stuff. Go check them out, gang. It's going to be great. Again, content's going to be slow. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things after the incident, but we will get there. We will get there. It'll be fun. Let me read these super chats and we'll get done. Okay, here we are. $5 from Slongy and Stew. I did an entire study in college on estrogen and water, making fish in Scotland hermaphrodites. There could be something there for today. Fun, interesting. 8 Australian dollars from Remy LeBeau. Lav can say Rav Tom if he lets his fem walls down. I'll let them.
I can teach you how to be a
DM.
man.
Yeah.
At home.
$10.
I
from
went to uni
Cameraman.
out in Bathurst, mate. I can man with the hardest of them. Just fucking give me a
Oh, can
beer.
you?
Let's go.
Okay.
Ooh, I have chills.
18 months. For inside 18 months from 1970. This is from Cameraman 502 for $10. Inside 18 months from 1971 to 1972, 2,500 bombings occurred in the United States, 5 a day. Those were almost exclusively from left-wingers. Should I consider left mentally ill as a result? That's a good question. $5 from Slong and Stew. Firstly, the left and right have to get together and agree upon the meaning of words, or no discussion is worthwhile. True. $20 from Lawson Harrison. Don't know if anyone has had this problem, but it's very difficult to find a more conservative therapist. By that, I mean a professional who doesn't over-validate. $2 from Testicle Johnson. I'm just a bitch because I'm an Aries.
Oh my god. Wait, real.
That's a very Pisces thing to say, by the way. But
Wait, real. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cameraman-
religion is cringe, guys. Astrology is totally cool.
Yeah, Cameraman 502 for $5. I don't know if being a leftist makes you mentally ill, but the lefties on this panel are delulu, particularly the one who thought Sowell is a race scientist. Are we? Yeah, I just want to clarify that. Do you mean Thomas Sowell, the economist, or?
Thomas Sowell, okay, I should call him a race social scientist more than a race biological scientist, but he does intrinsically blame black people's problems on black culture and nothing else.
I'm
Well-
curious what this commentator means by left in this instance. I assume that he thinks that me and Brian are on the right. I think,
I don't know. You'd
but
have to
I
ask.
have to confess that I am I'm an anarchist.
I'm
geez.
sorry.
Based.
Is anyone here on the right? Does anyone here identify as being on the right?
I think Brian was probably. I don't mean to.
He doesn't
I
use those
will
terms,
explain
right?
myself when my turn comes up.
Yeah,
for
we'll give you the
statements.
closing statements. Otherwise, like,
Sure.
again, I love the energy. I love the passion, gang. I love that you guys want to stay here forever and ever and ever, but we just can't. We can't do it. So we're going to end, and we're going to have some closing statements. Thank you all for being here. It's been a bit of chaos today. You all had so much to say. I love it. I love the energy. Thank you for the bits on the Twitch side. Thank you for the $2 Song and Stew. Wick is the best beer on the stream. Yes, I do. Hell yeah. With that,
Bring it.
closing statements, go ahead. We're going to start with Jane Gypsy, please.
Oh shit.
Closing
Okay.
thoughts. I know it's been hard to get in. I appreciate you coming anyway. Please give us what you got.
Okay, so my closing statement. I think the my overall like conclusion on this theory or this topic comes down to 3 main things. So biology first. The reason that leftists have higher rates of mental illnesses is because of how their brains function. And people on the right tend to use their right amygdala more, which is a fear-based processing. And on the left, it's the anterior cingulate cortex. I don't know. It's something like that. But it is something that's associated with processing like change and like practicality. So they're more open to take new information and change their responses from like a previous response. So that would like be correlated with trying new treatment or trying something differently. So I think people on the left are more likely to like seek treatment and accept mental illness because they're more comfortable with change, and like people on the right wouldn't be. And then second, it would be lifestyle. So I think like people on the right are more family oriented, and they're going to find fulfillment in having marriage, children, family, whereas people on the left might seek like a bigger purpose. So if women specifically are kind of feel like tied down to just their children and aren't fulfilled in maybe a career or some kind of creative hobby or something like that, they will probably feel more anxiety and depression, whereas like women on the right might feel fully fulfilled by family life. And then thirdly, the very last thing is your like values. So I think religion religion and just like your just overall values. Religion provides like a sense of security. I would consider a false sense of security, but for religious people, it's a sense of security. It's also
security.
like
We're all gonna die. Nothing matters.
Familiarity and stability, whereas people on the left kind of more like question things. They might like, fear of the unknown and things like that, which can lead to anxiety and things like that. So I don't think people on the left are more crazy. I just think it's a different way of perspective that may lead to more negative
Okay.
processes. Yeah.
Got you. Where can people find you?
It's Jane Gypsy, Twitter, YouTube, and the G in Gypsy is spelled with the number 6. And it's Jayne, Jane.
Check her out, gang. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Give her a follow. Radhom, go ahead.
Excellent. I think I've been pretty clear on my position throughout this discussion that I don't think that the left is actually crazier than the right. I just think that certain studies, this is here to hypnotize you, so you will believe what I'm saying. Studies are tracking certain things that leftists are more likely to align with and be open and honest about, honest with themselves and honest with the people that they're talking about, talking to, and that we need to do good work to make mental health better for everyone and make it more accessible. If there is a failing of mental health systems towards certain people, then that is something that should be addressed, and we need to, help each other, try and make the world a better place.
Oh, thank you for being here, Radhom. Where can people find you? Also, your ball handling skills are on point, but go ahead.
Thank you. You can find me over on Twitch at Real Radhom. I mostly paint miniatures while covering politics and picking apart conspiracy theories. I love examining and learning about the ways that people think and why they believe what they believe. I find it fascinating.
Okay. Well, I find the fact that you come on my show great. Thank you for being here. We'll get you on more often.
Thank you for having me, Whick.
Next up, Rashad. Last minute replacement. Thank you. I think you did well. Go ahead, Rashad.
I don't think that the left is driving anybody insane. I think acknowledgement and acceptance is the leading factor in why we see so many crazies in the left-wing space. I think the left could do a better job of cutting the grass every now and again and putting the insane people back in the asylum where they belong on occasion. But I think generally speaking, we're a lot closer to the middle ground than the right. So you can find me at Rashad Crenshaw on YouTube.
Check him out, gang. He's great, though his take on the left isn't driving anyone crazy, is just wrong. I don't know if you've dealt with him on Twitter or not, but look, it's a problem.
I've kept the distance on purpose.
Rashad, you're great. We love you. Thank you for being here. My personal favorite, Lav. Go ahead. What you got?
Sigma Femoid on everything. A lot of people were saying that I'm conservative in chat. I'm still center left. I have not changed for the past couple of years. I guess I'm politically homeless because nobody believes me wherever I am. I take from both places. I think one of the biggest problems is that we aren't getting married. I think one of the biggest problems is that we aren't having kids early enough. And I think that that's a really big problem on the left. And I think that that adds to a lot of directionlessness. And maybe that's craziness. Directionlessness is craziness. I don't think it's insanity. Also, though, as a eugenicist, I think that we should kill all these people. So that's my final take.
You don't want my channel to be monetized, do you?
And
You
thank
just
you
don't.
so much for introducing me to Radham. I have a huge crush now. And yeah, I have a thing for the mustache. I'm a theater kid, so this is like my.
Excellent.
It's
Like, lovely to meet you too, Lav. Hopefully, I can fix your transphobia.
Okay, good luck. I'll leave you to it. Have fun in DMs, gang. Alison, thank you. It's a little chaotic today. We had a lot of people here, but I appreciate you being here. What you got for us, please?
No problem. I think ultimately that the right and left presents different types of coping skills. One appeals more to women because they tend to internalize, they tend to look in terms of their needs and wanting to make sure that those needs get met, whereas men tend to see themselves in terms of their actions and taking action to affect a positive outcome. So it's just a different approach. Neither approach is necessarily better or worse. I think it's something that we need to take a bit from column A and a bit from column B. It's unfortunate that it has become very like the difference between the sexes in that, and yes, there is overlap, has become so politicized to the point where we aren't recognizing that you need both men and women for a healthy society, and the approach that both men and women have to have a healthy society. I think I'm going to take off of what Sigma Freud said and say that there is a big problem. We are not marrying, we're not forming families, we're not having children. And for whatever reason, the right is still doing that better, which I think that's maybe a source of the better mental health outcomes on the right. A society that doesn't form families is not going to continue. So if you encourage that, you're encouraging the end of whatever system that you are advocating for. It has to be something that encourages the formation of families. And men and women are happiest with each other. And I think that's what we're seeing. For whatever reason, the right is able to do that still. The left isn't. And that's going to be a problem if the left wants to ensure that its concepts and ideas continue into the future. All right, I'll hand that to Brian.
Okay.
Wait, you can.
Yeah, where can people
I gotta
find
get my-
you? Yeah.
No, nobody wants to. Don't subscribe to our channel. She didn't say anything. Forget it. I'm just gonna be homeless.
Okay, all right. We are on Twitter, Honey Badger Bite. So at Honey Badger Bite on Twitter, and on YouTube we are Badger Live Streams. I also have a main channel that's a little bit quiet because we sort of use it as a bulwark against the YouTube forces arrayed against us. So, but you can find us at Badger Live Streams or Honey Badger Bite on Twitter. Badger Live Streams on YouTube, Honey Badger Bite on Twitter. All right. Okay. Now, Brian.
Check her out, gang. She's great. Thank you for being here. Next time I have you on, we'll have a smaller discussion panel. I think that would be probably best. Brian, go ahead.
All right. Well, so I think that I'm gonna somewhat echo what Sigma and Alison said. That at the end of the day, what I think seems to make people happy is being in having a sense of purpose and stability, and that men and women both greatly benefit from that. And I think that purpose should be focused at the smallest point before it grows into anything larger than that. It's sort of like fix your own backyard kind of thing. And I think that tends to make people happy. I believe that since we are talking about women, I don't think that women are inherently crazy. I think that women's biology just, tells them that they want to be in a place where they feel safe and secure so that they can then raise children. This is what most women want. I'm sorry, Sigma, that's not centrist. That's just normal. That's just what women want. Just like men, most men just want to marry women and start families too. And there's nothing political about that, except, of course, unless you believe in patriarchy, in which case it is a problem. So a word about this whole left and right thing. So from the beginning, when I heard this, I I am kind of a kind of person that takes issue with these terms because I don't think they mean anything. And I'm going to read an excerpt from a book, and I'm going to describe something that happened in the stream while we were all talking. So this is a I'm just going to read this.
How long an
excerpt.
excerpt?
It's not that long. It's
Okay.
like a couple paragraphs. Okay.
It's 11
Among the
pages.
many thoughtless labels which have gained currency, the dichotomy between the political left and the political right is one of the most striking, not only for its wide acceptance, but also for its lack of definition or even an attempt at definition. Only the left is defined, initially by the kinds of ideas held by those who sat on the left side of the French National Assembly in the 18th century. But while the left is defined, at least in this general sense, the dichotomy itself remains undefined because the right remains undefined. Those who oppose the left are said to be on the right, and when they are strongly opposed or opposed across a broad spectrum of issues, they are said to be on the far right. But this is a somewhat Ptolemaic view of the political universe, with the political left being the center of that universe, and all those who differ in any direction are called the right. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why most people who are considered on the right don't necessarily agree with each other, and there's a lot of supposed infighting because most people just have different ideas on like how to live. Whether the free market libertarians or statists ranging from those with monarchist to fascist views, opponents of the left are called the right. In the United States, especially, the related term conservative is routinely used to encompass people who have no desire to preserve the status quo or to return to some status quo ante. Friedrich Hayek, for more than half a century, a prime opponent of leftist policies on the international stage, was thus considered a conservative, if not part of the far right. Yet Hayek himself wrote an article entitled "Why I'm Not a Conservative." Milton Friedman has likewise repudiated the conservative label and wrote a book entitled "The Tyranny of the Status Quo." Yet he is regarded as the leading conservative intellectual of his age, though many of the things he advocates have never existed in any society, like libertarianism. Like school vouchers did not exist when he first advocated them. So there's nothing conservative about it because it's never been done before. Among so-called black conservatives, it is virtually impossible to find anyone who wants to go back to anything. This group being opposed to both the racial discrimination policies of the past and the racial preference policies that came after them. So this is an issue that I see a lot, where there is there's like a ubiquitous understanding of this dichotomy that isn't real, because when you really look at what people believe, it doesn't fit neatly into much. But I will say there is a perspective that comes from the left, and I'm going to put that in quotes, that I see repeated over and over, and I'm going to base it on what you guys said throughout this talk. So the leftists defined leftism as liberty, inclusivity, progressivism, positive change for all, openness, collectivism, but also with a nice synergy to individualism because they're good when they're together, honesty because of the openness with other people, and accessibility, amongst other things. I'm sure that equity and fairness and all of this other thing would also fit in there. All of these are really good things, right? But the right is associated with, according to the left, conformity, traditionalism and exclusion, racism, selfishness, more mental health issues. They will oppress women. They are delusional. They engage in more mass shootings. They're schizophrenic. They deny problems, and they ignore social issues, in particular.
I want to be clear. I didn't call right people schizophrenic.
Hold on.
I simply pointed out the difference in the way these things are approached.
Answers. This is what you said.
You didn't say that.
Like,
I didn't call right-wing people schizophrenic.
And it's all it is exactly this. And I'm not gonna I will let you guys say whatever, but I will let the chat decide for themselves. You are listening to this stream, and the only, I didn't define my politics at all. All I was concerned with is what are the issues, where do they come from, what are some potential solutions. And I think, and it's really important that we know this, Alison's point about the family and children is absolutely crucial. Birth rates are not at replacement level. Our infrastructure is going to go down, and the people who maintain everything that we have, including what we are doing right now, just about everything, not everything, is men. And so, like, we have to understand that they are absolutely crucial to all of the comforts we have in our first world experience. So that's it. I just want to say that.
That's it. Oh, wow.
Where did you
it was
get that
so
quote
quick.
from?
Oh, by the way, you want to know what this book? This is from
Yeah, I'd love to
a
read
book
it.
called the Vision of the Anointed by, I guess, notorious conservative race writer Thomas Sowell. So yes, it is Thomas Sowell. It was written in 1995. So he was
Okay.
talking about this stuff for over 30 years.
And
And
people find
this
you.
is what I take. I think that the entire dichotomy is a fucked up mess. Sorry for the language. We can't talk about these things honestly, and it creates camps where none should exist. And this dichotomy, this like I am in the camp of all the good things, and you are all in the camp of all the bad things, is why these conversations can't take place. Which is me echoing that super chat from earlier that said if we don't define our terms, we're not going to get anything done. So, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and when I started doing this, I considered myself on the left because I thought the same thing. I thought the left was about equality and fairness and all the nice things and compassion, etc. And the right was the opposite of that. And it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
We could talk about it on another day on another panel. It's a great topic.
This is a
I'm always
discussion I'd be very happy to have with you.
For now.
Now's not the time.
I want to say where people can find me before I forget.
Yes, because
So-
I gotta eat and we gotta go.
Yeah, I know. I'm a producer at Honey Badger Radio. I host all the shows on Badger live streams, but I also have my own channel. It's called Honey Badger Arcade, where I do game streams. Sometimes I play with my wife, and we'll talk about things in the culture because I'm an artist and I love art and beauty, and I want to preserve it. So that's it. And I'm on Twitter. I'm at Badger
Just like
Arcade.
the Nazis. Crazy.
Yeah, just like the
Crazy.
Nazis, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Check him out, gang. Give him a follow, give him a sub, all that nice things. Gang, we're gonna be back next week. There's no stream till next week. Next week on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. The Yankee Tanky has challenged me to a debate. He says that you can't be pro-Palestine unless you're also pro the axis of resistance. Hamas, Hezbollah, United Yemen. I strenuously disagree. So we're going to have a talk at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll have some other stuff. We'll have maybe one more show next week. Again, I'm taking it slow content-wise. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Give all these people a follow. We're going to raid out. I'll see you guys later. Wait, bye, everyone.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye.